Hello and welcome to the Silent Evil Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I am Cameron.
And we're coming at you with the brand new Silent Hill game, F, which still to this day, I'm not too sure what the F stands for. You know, through all these hours, put like 40 hours into this game, and I'm not too sure what the F is. You know, all I can think about is that Ted joke, and I think it's like Ted 2. It might be in Ted. No, it's in Ted 2, where they go, what's F Fitzgerald stand for? Oh, it's got to be fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so there it is. But the cool thing about this is the fact that this is really the first big game from Konami, and like a decade. Of course, you know, there's Metal Gear Delta, but that's, you know, a remake. There's been a bunch of collections. They've been doing a good job about that. You had some cool Castlevania, some cool Contra. There has been a couple new Contras throughout the years, but they're generally mostly in, you know, your 2.5D style games. But this is the first, like, it's a big, brand new game from Konami. And boy, did they really knock this out of the park. I mean, I think this is literally the best Silent Hill game since Silent Hill 3 at least. If not even, maybe even Silent Hill 1. Like, that's how good it is. I love the living daylights out of this bad boy.
Oh, I fully agree. This one took me by complete surprise because, like, I knew enough about, like, all I knew is 1960s. It's gonna be in Japan. It's Asian, like, you know, developed more or less. So it's out of, you know, Western hands at this point for development. And that it just had a really creepy tone, you know, like walking into this. But really had no idea like what I was getting into and how vastly impressive this game's, like, from its first hour through its, you know, like third ending that I've seen so far. You know, like everything about this is just so solid, you know. So
yeah, no, it's just the whole experience in itself. I mean, like, if I have complaints, they're like the most minor ones, really. And I know that me and you had talked about, like, probably the biggest complaint that I think we both kind of had was that they give you way too many, like, health items that, like, your inventory is always just jacked from, like, how much stuff you've got. They're like, I got to sell this, or you don't sell it. That's the most American thing. Like, well, I go to the altar, and it's not there for praying, and, you know, it's like, no, I'm doing it for the currency.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck your face.
Yeah, this face stuff. No, that's money. You know. But yeah, it's like, other than that though, it's like there was nothing. Like everything about it was just like, it was so good, and it gives you that ultimate Silent Hill feel, very classic style, while still kind of adding things to it. And then I think just the fact that you had this cool 60s, you know, old school Japan style story. And the fact that it is just very Japanese, because that was always been kind of a complaint that I sort of had since almost like 2010, is that a lot of Japanese games lost their Japanese-ness. Now, granted, it was, I think, due to the fact that so many things were starting to be made by Europeans and Americans. And like all the Silent Hill games, I think, past 4 aren't made by Japan anymore.
Right.
You know, maybe one of those ones in there, but I don't think so. I know Homecoming, I want to say, is American. Shattered Memories that we played earlier is. And then even Downpour, which I thought about it, that's the last Silent Hill game, I think, that came out. So that was 2012. So it's been, you know, 13 years, you know, since a Silent Hill game, you know. The closest thing I guess you got was that 2 and 3 collection that came out on 360 and PS3. I don't know which one came first, that or Downpour, but...
Well, I mean, like the last like real Silent Hill thing that was going on was in I guess this was either 2014, 2015. But it was Kojima. You know, like Kojima had Silent Hills. We got PT. We got the demo. Playable teaser, you know, demo or whatever. That was fantastic. But after especially after playing this game, like, I'm kind of glad Kojima didn't get his hands on it. Like, you know, like because now, I mean, like, ultimately what happened was, you know, PT happened. Kojima gets, you know, fired or laid off or whatever happens over there at Konami. And then we get Death Stranding out of it. Now we get OD, and we get, like, you know, like all these other games, you know, that is Kojima Unchained. But you're absolutely right. Like, this is the first Silent Hill game in forever. You know, even just from the last one that even came out. I very much agree with your sentiment of, you know, like, this is probably the best since 3. I'm 100% with you on that. I was excited to initially play it after completing it the first time, like just going ham and just playing it over and over and over again. Like the way that this game is designed and the way that it tells its story and everything like that is just so engrossing and so engaging that it drug me out for, like you said, about 40 hours, so far. And I still have endings to go do, and I still have things to go see, and like all that. So very, very good. I agree.
Yeah, no, just the whole like concept of it, they just like knocked it out of the park on this one. Just the vibe, the feel, and all that kind of stuff, and just that world. It kind of reminded me of like almost like playing Shenmue back in like the Dreamcast era, where that game was one of the first times I remember it felt like, wow, I felt like I was legitimately in this cool Japanese town, in the 80s. So this one's like in the 60s, so it kind of felt like it takes you back there. And I mean, it's one of the first games in a while that I kind of was stopping and literally looking at all the details. Like I'd get excited about going to a room and seeing how things were set up and seeing the placement of just objects that had nothing to do with gameplay or any of that kind of stuff. Just the world building was so cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and yet again, I mean, here we are, how many games have we covered this year so far that are on the Unreal Engine, and I was admittedly a bit worried walking into this just because of how one performance again, like I'll just bring that up, with Unreal Engine games and PC, like a lot of them just aren't well optimized. That's really not the case here. There's some problems here and there. But I think in general, like Konami actually did pretty good. And then with the patch like 1.01 or whatever, like as soon as that came out, majority of the hitching issues went away. And that was within a day or two of launch, so like I was pretty happy with that side of it. But talking about detail, that is one thing that Unreal is so good at, is to like really flesh out those details, within artist designs and all that. Just pure pixel count in this game is just incredible, what they were able to pull off. Even like boiling down to, traditional Silent Hill fog effects. I think you can see a lot of direct mirroring from Silent Hill 2 from last year to this, like a lot of the same design ideals, but obviously different settings and all that. But yeah, no, it's cool to see a game actually in Unreal that operates well and looks as good as it does. Meanwhile, having a great story and pretty decent mechanics, so.
Well, and probably the fact that since it's Silent Hill and it does the survival horror kind of classic style, is that probably contains that Unreal Engine a little bit better than like some games that are just way too open and everything like that, So it probably makes the graphics shine in a sense, because it does sort of feel like, sounds weird, but it almost feels like you're just playing a really, really good looking PS2 game. At the end of the day, like it's just the design structure and everything like that kind of feels in that kind of style. It's not like there's not a whole lot of things you can kind of go around and climb on and move about and so on. They still have that Silent Hill thing where so many doors lead to nothing and they're just locked, just to piss you off, one of those ones. Like, I feel like that was sort of a joke back in the day, because I was just like, we want to make our world feel a little bit better, so we'll put some doors here so that, I don't think it was necessarily designed like they're just going to be locked. It's like, oh no, that was just like, we just want to make it look like a world, so you're not just running by a bunch of houses that for some reason have no doors on them, But by this point, it's just they're there, and this game almost just like adds to it. Like, okay, here's the door, and it goes nowhere, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's absolutely constant too, man. The amount of times I would pop open my, like the map, in the game, because thank God this game has an actual map that's really good, and it's actually designed well. But like exactly what you're saying. Like you'll enter into a brand new building or a brand new place or whatever, and it's just like a million hallways with just just like tens of doors you just can't go through. It's like, okay. So
yeah, I will say that map though is really dialed in. Like, and I like how it starts adding cool drawings and stuff on the places you go, so you kind of like know what there is, and it'll give you location information and so on like that. It's so good that like the only thing that could almost really make it better is if you did sort of have a mini map, because I did click that map button so many times when you're running through it that you're like, it'd be kind of nice if I didn't have to do that every single time, but that's okay, because sometimes Hinako will stop running when you get out of the map, and it's not like it doesn't have a classic run button. It has the L3 one, so you always got to re-click it. It's not like you're holding square or something like that. And you just continuously keep running.
Yep. Yeah, I thought about that too. With just like somewhat of a mini map in the game, I thought would have been cool. But at the same time, like with how minimalistic its HUD design is, like as is, I think that's why why that grabbed me that first run so hard, is because you're not constantly looking at a health bar and you're not looking at like your weapons or like like anything like that, or having a map in your face at all given times. I think it totally played into how much I feel like I know this game now in terms of like every corner, every hallway, every door, every like I've played it like so many times, and I think not having the map like directly in your face the whole time, and being being able to actually pull it up with a button or two, just really visually learning the game that way, like was super fun, so I've actually like there's well, we'll get to it a little bit later. I'll talk about certain areas or whatever, but
Yeah, no. So you do have the map, and for the fact it does have the the HUD, you only see it when you pull your weapon out or whatever. Well, I guess your weapon's always pulled out, but I mean when you go to swing and everything like that, then you get your little status bar of health and sanity and stamina, and all that kind of stuff. It really, even in the fighting, it has that classic Silent Hill. You got your melee weapons and so on like that. You don't ever get a gun. You don't ever get any long range weapons. There's only a couple. There's only like one enemy that I really wish you had a gun for, just because they're kind of just a pain and they just get in your way. But so stupid ones that like barf all over the place, and then you can't walk across it for like 20 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's the only ones. Like, man, if I had a gun right now, that would solve this issue. Or I feel like this is the kind of game you could have like a bow and arrow. That would be like the thing that would seem kind of appropriate for it. The one range weapon you have.
Or even, I mean, like just because everything is so melee based as is, like why not a javelin or a spear or something? I mean, like there's so many like Japanese weapons that would just like totally make sense here, like that we're using anyways, like especially in like Dark World and stuff, but I agree.
Something that I can throw, even that's like, that could be one of those ones you could throw your weapon, if maybe it instantly breaks or something, but it will do like massive damage when you do that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, I think that was another piece that really took me by surprise here too. Is that the game is very, very heavy combat. Like I wouldn't say like extremely, like until we get like deeper into the game. Like a lot of it's skippable. You don't really have to do it, but the game wants you to fight, and it took me a minute to like really get used to these controls. The way that Hinako moves, like your heavy attack versus light attack versus focus attack versus like dodge mechanics and like counter attack, and like there's like all these things that are in here that everybody and their mother is going to compare to the Souls franchise, which I do to an extent, but after as long as I have played this game now and how many playthroughs I've done, like that's definitely subsided. It's its own style of combat, I feel. And I think that if anything, like that's probably going to be the make or break it point for a lot of people is going to be this combat system. It's not bad whatsoever. I actually think it actually works really well in this game. There's some problems that I have a little bit later into multiple playthroughs that I'll talk about a little bit later. But I think in general, like it totally serves its purpose. It makes Hinako like, especially like the like first few combat scenes that you're in or whatever, and she has her steel pipe and she's swinging it, and it's like the guttural noises coming out of her, like when she makes contact and all that. Like it feels good. Like it looks good and it feels good. So I'd be curious to hear your opinion about Silent Hill combat here. So.
Well, the funny thing that I've always thought throughout the entire years of playing Silent Hill games is that there always used to be those almost like Silent Hill purists who were always kind of negative towards Resident Evil. I always thought it was kind of goofy, but like you've seen them like the whole time, and they would always talk about like, Resident Evil is just all action packed and so on. And for every Silent Hill game I've ever played, I'm like, I think they always have way more action in Silent Hill games than like any Resident Evil. Like even like Resident Evil 5, I don't know if compares to like how much action sometimes you do. And now granted, you could run away from a lot of stuff in Silent Hill games. You don't have to kill everything. But for how much like clubbing you do, which is very satisfactory, so it's almost one of those ones like you don't really want to skip the you know, too much action because there's something just so grand about just like beating the living daylights out of something with like a pipe, you know, or you know, the axe and all those weapons like that, you know, is and just like in any of the older Silent Hill games too, you know, when you're just clubbing those dogs in the very beginning coming at you and so on like that. But yeah, it is interesting because this one, what it does is it takes that original Silent Hill, you know, 1, 2, 3, and 4 even kind of melee attacks, but then it adds in the stamina bar, which I don't think is in. I was trying to think if that was in anything else. I know in 4 you have like a charge up attack, you know. I don't think there's a stamina bar in that one if I'm mistaken, but that's kind of the big difference is you have that and you have the dodge and I guess the counter as well too. So you have all this, it's like almost like Silent Hill Combat 2.0 and that kind of adds in, I guess what you would say, the Dark Souls kind of stuff there and so on. Yeah. Because that's what I always think about those Dark Souls ones is they always have that stamina bar and it's kind of connected to that. You know, so you can't just go willy-nilly swinging, you know, to you know your heart's content. You got to kind of hit, wait, swing, wait, dodge, wait. You know, but I don't think it ever takes away from it. I think it's all pretty darn good. The only thing that's kind of goofy is you got your lock on, which for some reason I was playing on the Xbox One, so you always had to press X, which was a strange button for that to be. I always just think that's a weird one for there. It works, but it's kind of weird. The only downfall is that lock on gets really janky the second that there's more than like one other enemy there, you know, especially like there's certain boss fights too where you're fighting 2 people at the same time and it keeps switching even though you didn't switch it. And that's about the only thing that kind of like, I will say, kind of jacks you up a little bit in that combat there. So sometimes it's like that thing you just because of that lock on, you almost have to kind of like bring the enemies to you so that doesn't throw you off, or else next thing you know, Hinako's swinging at the wrong enemy. You didn't intend to, but it's a very minor one, but I feel like it's just enough there to be like, okay, you know, this can be there. I almost feel like the lock on should be tied to the focus thing because you know, L2 is what you're using to do this focus thing, so you can do a more powerful attack. It has its own sanity meter and everything like that, and then it also allows you to see the counters really well, which I did not see those at all my first playthrough. I was like, dude, they showed me this like, and my very first playthrough, I don't think I had a single counter because I never saw that counter thing where it's like I saw it in like the tutorial. I'm like, cool, so they flash and everything like that, and then I never saw it. My second playthrough, I saw it all the time, and I used it like left and right. I was like, what? Yeah, maybe I just had more sanity. It might have just had more sanity because I noticed that like that's kind of how you see it.
Because it took me a minute to like fully actually recognize like what the game is trying to project like visually to you like during a counter. So enemies will attack you in numerous ways. You know, you got, you know, basically like counterable attacks and uncounterable attacks or whatever. You really don't have like a block in this game. You just basically have a dodge, a counter, and then just like, you know, strong and heavy attacks. And then like Spence is talking about like this focus attack thing. The counter is cool, especially later game enemies, like the ones that it truly matters because it causes a stagger, and that gives you enough time to like fully charge up like a whole focus attack, you know, and then you can do your heavy attack immediately afterward. It's okay. It just really wasn't fleshed out, like because there's also like I don't know if I'm sure you have experienced it at some point in your playtime, but a perfect dodge, you know, like time slows down and all that, you know, and then you can do like a counter attack that way too, because like if they would have like fleshed out both of those systems a little bit more, it probably would have turned this game into Devil May Cry, honestly, and like probably wouldn't have been a good thing. but at the same time, it's like if that's the combat model you're going for, like go for it, you know, because like there's a bit of jank here that's like it feels good in most scenarios, but it's like that 5% of the time it's just like it's just like it just feels a little too janky for this, you know. So but as Spence mentioned, multiple enemies are a problem, and a lot of the design, especially so we have like real world and we have dark world as per normal with a lot of Silent Hill titles. but Dark World is like just very hallway and short, like little skinny little narrow hallways and all that, and it's just, especially later game, just tossing so many enemies at you. When you have 3 or more enemies on screen, like Spence is saying, and you're trying to change targeting on them, eventually I just got to the point where I just stopped targeting entirely and just did attacks like without actually physically being locked on. It was helpful to an extent because the game is built around Hinako locking onto enemies and whatnot. A lot of their attack structures and whatnot are based off that, so your camera's always facing them. However, when you have an enemy that comes at you with like a 5 or 6, attack combo swing or whatever, and you're unlocked, you can just literally just walk around them, and just hit them in the back and whatnot, So I got really good really quickly at like just going unlocked and just dealing with multiple enemies that way. Get one into an animation so it's stuck in its animation while I kill the other one, like that type of thing. So yeah, the lock-on's a bit jank too. I very much agree there. So
yeah, it's one of those ones. It's a small complaint once again, but it's just it's a little bit goofy. And I guess you technically don't have to use it. Sometimes though, Hinako might swing and miss a little bit more without it. I do feel, especially when you're trying to do like a heavy attack and so on. And a lot of times at the end of the day, like with so many of these kind of games, the best thing to do is just keep swinging until the thing dies. Sometimes you want to go, I'm going to dodge, I'm going to do all this stuff, and then you just end up getting more damage than if you just would have just kept swinging and just go for broke. Sometimes that tactic a lot of times just outworks anything else. But no, I still think it's kind of cool. I think it adds a little bit of variety to everything. As I said, once I got used to like the counters and so on like that, the only downfall though is like you'll get used to the counters where you'll be wait, counter, wait, counter. And then one of those stupid enemies will do a grab attack, which just goes right through anything you do. Yep. If you do an attack, it doesn't matter. That grab goes through everything. And you can't even, and it's weird because it's like, you think like in any other game, you would mash the buttons and it doesn't matter. It's just that animation comes on, Hinako's going to get stabbed with a knife or she's going to get licked by like the rapist creatures or whatnot. Like, doesn't matter. Like, there's nothing you can do. Those grabs always they're just there to piss you off. You're like, stupid thing, grab me, god damn it.
Well, and that's what's funny. So like you dropped by my office a day or two ago or whatever, and like, we were talking about this and I had mentioned to you and like I mentioned earlier in the episode, like about the map design and whatnot. Like, so I have like enemy locations are in my head now. Like I know that there's gonna be one of those fuckers like right around that corner, And what was funny is like once you start to recognize it, once you start to break the game down into wireframe that way, and you're more or less just speed running at that point, just trying to get all these endings done. Like what would be fun is like run up to that corner, stop right before it, turn right back around, and it's supposed to be like a jump scare scene, so like the music gets all intense and whatnot, and this thing like comes running out at you and like holding its hands out and shit, and like trying to grab you and stuff, and you're just like, just around it. But no.
Yeah, so even though there's some of their regular attacks, they'll have that grab will come out every once in a while that And it's kind of interesting too because there's really like I was thinking about it like enemy wise, there's really probably almost like less than 10 different types of enemies in this game with some variations, of course. But if you kind of think about it, a lot of times it's like there's maybe like 2 to 3 variations of like one creature. But it still works. It's not like one of those weird ones where you feel like, oh, I feel like I've seen these ones, a bunch of times. You have these the first one I guess you see is you have these kind of like ladies that are all like, sewn together and like, weird, bendable bodies and so on like that. And of course, then there's like a flowered morph version of it. There's another version where they have blades on their legs and so on. But it's kind of the same core enemy. You got these really annoying scarecrows. I think that's probably the worst enemy almost of them all, other than maybe like, but you don't see it. They're only in like 2 parts of the entire game, but just sometimes the way that those ones will kind of go after you. The fact that was the one puzzle that I remember got me. There's a part where you have to be out in this field checking these scarecrows. And I remember the first time I thought it was like, okay, here's the clue. Look for the one with the, upside down smile or whatever the heck it was. And so many times I picked the wrong one, and I was like, dude, I broke like 2 of my weapons out here. Like, I thought I could bully my way through it. I'm like, I'll just kill them all, whatever. Nope. Well, then you kill them all, you go to the next one. It's like, oh yeah, there's 5 more of these patches.
Yep.
It was just like, oh geez, here we go.
Because I love, dude, I love the the very first like monster type that you come across, like you were saying, are just like these. How to describe them? They're fucking, they're mannequins. They kind of have like opposable like arms and like legs and limbs and things that can like rotate and move and like twist and all that, kind of like a GI Joe or like a Barbie doll or something like that, like. But the way that these things contort and move and like twitch and like just like come out, oh dude, the very first encounter in this game, bro, because like I come home from that crazy work trip, like was super late. I got delayed by a fucking day due to a random ass storm down in Phoenix. And I get home that Saturday and boot up the game, and it's like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm like, hell yeah, I'm ready for Silent Hill experience. And dude, the first hour of this fucking game is so scary, dude. It was so scary. Yeah, this enemy in particular, dude, because like one of the very first things that happens here is like, it kind of throws like a jump scary type thing at you. You're walking down this hallway, and all of a sudden, like this like bucket just comes flying out of nowhere, and like hits the wall, and you're like, oh god, like what was that? And like you're creeping up, and all of a sudden this thing just jumps out of the corner at you, and it's this mannequin that's just, I don't know, like I said, just the way it contorts and moves and just slides along the ground and stuff, and like, oh dude, it was just so creepy because you don't have anything to deal with it at this point, like. Prior to Hinako getting any weapons, like this was probably one of the scariest games I had played in forever, But the fucking scene where she gets that pipe, like all that fear just immediately, I was like, oh, this is like, I started to understand the combat model. I'm like, oh, this is kind of like Souls. Like I know Souls really well, and just turned into an action game at that point. But in general, like I said, like its first hour, its introduction, it's the way that it did the town, it did the fog, it did like the first couple enemy types and all that, just phenomenal, dude, just so good. And that really rings true throughout the rest of the experience too. It turns into an action game more so than a horror game, in my opinion, anyways. But yeah, those first enemies, solid. Solid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the horror's always there, no matter what. I feel like. Yeah. Because it's like, it feels like how, you're going to scare somebody in a couple different ways, just like in vibe and story. You can get them with jump scares. That's just the easy one. Or you could do the thing where, you just do the punishing one where it's like, guess what? You haven't saved forever. Well, if you die, that's it. Which that one I've always feels like less scary, more annoying, than anything else. Where I felt like this one had the perfect balance of like the action, the horror, and all that stuff. It does have a copious amount of monsters in it, though. That is definitely for sure. But it's almost at one times I feel like, does it make a game like more scary when there's actually less things and you just don't expect them too often, and then when they do show up, it's always like, oh, I haven't seen one of these in a while. Then like when you just kind of expect to see one like every other like room, something's gonna be in there for me to club to death. And I feel like you want to, like especially for the most part, you're like, I just need to get this thing out of my way so I can search this room and see if there's any good items in here and so on like that. But
no, this game's horror in general, like it totally exists in its narrative, like this game is fucking creepy regardless how you cut it, even with the amount of multiple playthroughs and like multiple endings you can get. Like the game is just outright creepy, and I don't know, like I said, we'll get to it, but
yeah, exactly. It's funny because it's like one of those ones like this, like for like the last like week and a half or whatever. It's like I play this game every day before I go to bed. Sleep great. Yep. I know there's always some people that go like, dude, I can't play those horror games anymore. Especially I can't play them at night. It's just like, oh, I'm like, I go to bed with a smile every single time. I don't know. But yeah, just all the other monsters too, because then you have there's these big old fat guys. I always refer to them as the fatty poo poo monster thing that comes at you there, and then of course there's the barfer monsters that like throw up all over the ground. They got all these like heads around them and so on. And then when you're in like the dark realm worlds, you kind of have variations of those. So instead of having the barf monster, you got the weird like, there's like the China doll one where it's just a bunch of heads around there and everything like that, and they cry out and they're kind of a pain. And then you have, and then there is the creepy, the rapey monsters, which they remind me of the ones from Silent Hill 1. You know, they're almost like kind of like monkey looking things in that game where they just kind of jump on you and they pounce. But just the way that Hinako describes them, because one of the cool things in this game too is that Hinako has this cool journal that like fills up as she has her experiences / the things she finds, which really just gives you a lot of cool reading material throughout the whole game. But when she describes these like rapey creatures, that she literally describes them almost like creepy men that like hang out at like the corner, you know, and give you like the dirty looks and so on like that, and you know, obscene gestures and so on, and just like the description of all that stuff is just like, oh, you just picture it's like, oh yeah, just those like nasty people out there and so on like that, especially preying on a 15-year-old girl like coming home from school.
Yeah, because I mean, like even that monster design, because I think it is probably one of the more interesting ones in the game. But the way that it sits, because it kind of sits like a toad, you know, like to an extent, because it's kind of down on all fours or whatever. I get the monkey sense that you were looking at. Big old fat like pot belly, you know, sticking out and all that, and just like this like really large like, you know, orange with like all these like pustules on its tongue, you know, tongue sticking out and whatnot. And it's a grabby bitch. It fucking wants to grab you and lick the shit out of you and stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
It's also kind of similar to a licker from Resident Evil 2, realistically as well, too. It even has that same thing that the thing's kind of blind. So, like, if you do see one, you can stop running and, you know, you could walk and you could kind of get around them that way if you just use the walk thing. So a lot of times it's just, once again, it's just, I could do that. That could take more time. I'm just going to club it to death really quickly if I see one of those things, because those are the only few enemies that are kind of hard to run away from. Where everything else you can kind of run away, whatever, see you later. That one will actually catch up to you if you can't get through a door in time or something like that. So sometimes I felt like it was just easier just to beat it to death and then go on.
Yeah. Because that one, and then the other one that's extremely similar, but it's basically like the gray version of them, but they have the shackles on their arms and they don't have a face. They just have that hole in their face or whatever. Because those ones too, like they will chase you forever, dude. Like they have super long leashes in this game. So, and most of them too, like is especially like later on in the game, you know, like have combat sections where you have to kill everything in that room to move on, you know. So that gets a little frustrating too. So
yeah, because if you do want to sort of speed run this, it's like that part's the ones that kind of get you. Where like you'd think that you could run away from the majority of things, just including maybe a boss. You know, there is a lot of those areas where like they have, I guess you would just say like a mini boss that you have to get rid of. Which a lot of times it mostly is always they have these like other creatures like they like birthing monsters that are real nasty looking, and they got all these pusses on. It's just like a lady just like laying back like almost in like a chair, and then she keeps shooting out these orbs that sometimes turn into either exploding sacks or they like will spawn enemies out of them, which is kind of annoying. And for the most part, that's actually not really the hardest enemy to kill. It just takes a lot of hits. So it's like mostly I just always pull out the knife, or you pull out like the sickle or something like that, because those ones always did the most damage. Just go to town, just slash. Hopefully this thing will die. But mostly that was always the enemy that would cause the section that you need to get past. Because there's very few other enemies I can think of that like if you don't kill them, like you can't get by them. But I know a lot of times whenever I'd see that creature, that was mostly like at least a 50-50 chance that you probably had to kill it.
Yep. Yeah. Because that thing pops up, God, probably 6 times, I'd imagine. Like there's probably 4 of those, maybe 5 of those, if not all of them. I do think that they are complete stopping points for the most part. Like you have to kill. The egg thing that they do, like them spawning other enemies and whatnot. The very first time I fought that thing, like it. I didn't really know what to do, because like I was hitting it, and it just was not dying, and it just kept shitting out eggs, and like those eggs would spawn into more mannequins and stuff, and like, dude, it just took forever. but at the same time, like Spence says, a lot of cases in this game, like you just have to go to town on it. You got to play into the stamina system. You got to play into the the durability system of this game. Of weapons and whatnot, and just attack until something dies, because eventually it will. Which is probably another piece that we kind of skipped on initially anyways, is the difficulties of this game. Because we have a story mode, we have a hard mode, and then we have like a really hard mode, like basically. And really, like, I found it really interesting. The game launched with, like, by default, it wants you to play story mode for combat, and it wants you to do hard mode for puzzles and whatnot. So for me, I just did story both my very first run. I understand you did story combat and hard puzzles, right?
Yeah, because I saw that was like the initial default, so I was like, I'll go with that then, because I was like, worst case on puzzles, you can just look them up. If that you won't get stuck there. Like if you go hard on gameplay right off the bat, that I see that happen to. We have a certain friend who will do that. We'll put the game on the hard the very first time, and then he'll get stuck halfway through and never be able to beat the game. So it's like I never want to put myself in that position,
Yeah.
But it's almost like, in a sense, like when I saw the story mode, I felt like that was kind of insulting, because a lot of times when a game mostly says story this day and age, it's mostly not. It's mostly like the difficulty below easy is mostly how I like when I see that mode. Like it's almost like the lowest of the low. It's the equivalent of like, we're gonna put that pink bow on your sword for Ninja Gaidens, just so everybody knows that like you have great shame.
Yeah. Yep.
So. It was that weird one where I had a hard time kind of almost like clicking that, because I was like, this doesn't feel right. Like I don't like seeing that story mode thing. Can't you just call it normal?
Yeah.
And so on. And the weird thing though, I will say though, is if you were one of those people that did play a lot of video games on story mode because you're like, well, I just like to see what the story is, and I just want to be able to breeze through it, and I don't like dying and stuff like that, you would be sorely mistaken if you click this story mode, because this story mode still is tough. It's still like, I would say it's just a normal Silent Hill difficulty, but yeah, the fact is, it's like, you can't expect going in there, this is going to be like story mode on Uncharted or something like that. It is not the same thing.
No, exactly. And really what it boils down to is like the amount of damage that you take, that's really what's reduced. Enemy health, I really don't know, because we can't see this game in wireframe, like the way that I would love to, but I imagine, playing on all three difficulties at this point, story and hard seem like enemy health anyways is like roughly the same. Like they really feel roughly about the same. It's Hinako's outward damage, and it's the damage towards her that really changes between both of those, that I noticed anyways. So God knows if that's true or not, but that's what I witnessed anyways. So and then it's even worse into the fog mode, dude. Like I'll get to that eventually when we get to when we start talking about the individual sections of that game, because there are pieces of the very hard mode here that's just no thank you ever again. I'm glad I got the achievements for it. No thanks. Puzzle mode though, dude, puzzle mode and Into the Fog is sick. It's so good, and it made me, because by that point I had already done a story mode puzzle, run through the game. I had done like a partial hard run mode. Unfortunately, missed some pieces of the endings that I wanted, so I had to go back and redo this run. But then I redid a whole brand new run into the Fog in New Game Plus or whatever. And what was cool is like I'll use like one of the shrine puzzles for example. Like there's 5 pillars that you're supposed to select, set objects onto. And it's like one of the original like shrine, the very first time you go to the Dark World or whatever. In easy mode, or in story mode rather, every single one of those idols that you're investigating and looking and spinning around and whatnot, they all have a tie pattern on them. So there's like a string on it and it's tied in a certain way and whatnot. And you're looking at each individual of the 5 pillars, and you have like a riddle in front of you or whatever, but you're looking at all the pillars, and like you notice on the front of those pillars there's like this same exact tie pattern, like the rat that's wrapped in the leaf has a tie pattern on it, it goes here and blah blah blah, and then you set them all, cutscene plays, you move on with your life, yada yada. In hard mode, it was based off of like actual designs of the idols themselves or whatever. So like there was like one that had like a leaf printed on the side of it and blah blah blah. And it just the way that the game goes from like story to hard to Into the Fog, like difficulty wise, puzzle wise, it just gets more and more complex, so the layers of complexity rise. So by the time I got to my Into the Fog run or whatever, I'd already experienced story and hard mode on that particular puzzle. So I was like, what is like really different here? And it adds in like a whole other layer that I don't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head, but there was like a whole other layer there. I remember going like, oh, like that click moment, and like, oh, that's what oh, sick. Okay. so much of that in this game, dude, nonstop. You know, with the puzzle side of things, I thought that was super neat. You know.
Yeah, no, I thought the puzzles are very dialed in this one. And the kind of cool thing too is that you know, because you played it on like the story mode for puzzles, I like how like they actually give you achievement for that, but you don't get that achievement because you played it on a harder difficulty. So it gives you a reason to go through and see each variation of them and so on like that, which I think that's kind of cool, you know, and the fact because they are sort of different. And I noticed that just because I played the hard one and then the Into the Fog one for the puzzles, is that mostly when you got to the Into the Fog, your clues were just more like, you know, like limited / confusing in a sense. So there was a little bit more guess play, I guess, into them. But no, they were still really fun. As I said, for the most part, like, other than the Scarecrow one, I never had too much of an issue with most of those puzzles. I mean, like you would take a little bit of time and you kind of solve the clues, but you felt good about it too. You know, a couple of them you sort of do like the guessing thing. It's just like, oh, there we go, it finally worked. You know, I just switched this around enough times and so on. Or there's like a door one when you're at like Hinako's house. I for some reason, even though it clearly says it down there on the controls below, I didn't realize you could flip those things over. And I was like, I sat there for like a while, like, dude, I've like literally tried every combination of this. And then it was like, oh, you could make one of them blank. Well,
Yep.
Oh boy, that was like one of those, you felt like kind of like, oh, it says it right there, X flip. Yeah. Oh yeah, should have paid attention to that.
Well, and I think that's what's so great about it too is like because again, like, you know, I played all of story mode, most of hard mode into that. So this was a weird thing too because you just mentioned the achievements. So I played through story mode first run, you know, get the story mode combat and puzzle, you know, achievements each for that. My next run, I do, you know, like after some fumbling with a couple different runs, but inevitably my next run was Into the Fog on both combat and puzzle. I go and I finish that run, so I get the achievement for the combat one, but I also get the hard achievement for combat, but I don't get the hard puzzle one for some reason.
well, that's what I was saying is because because I didn't get the easy puzzle achievement because I never did that one. So I think that's kind of the interesting thing is that makes you play each one of the puzzle ones to get the achievement.
But why is it different with combat though? That's what
I guess because combat's one of those ones like if you played hard, it's not like the combat's radically different in the easy one. Right. You know, I think the puzzles they want you to see the variations. I just thought that was kind of cool because I never see that before. Yeah. Even though I know it makes you forcefully have to play a game 3 times if you want everything, but you know, and especially if you played it. If you do it really hard, you almost have to go back and play it easy. But relatively, if you're going to play the game over and over, I would feel that the playing it on puzzle easy wouldn't bother you anyways. You'd be like, oh, I just want to see what the difference is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. The like I said, like finishing it Into the Fog, like getting the hard achievement as well as Into the Fog at the same exact time, you know, but not the same on the puzzle end. I was like, that's strange. But you know, there is so much variation between the three that it's worth it. I definitely think it's worth it, you know.
Yeah, well, and even speaking of achievements, I will say this game actually probably has some of the coolest, most unique ways of giving you achievements that I've seen in a game in a very long time. You know, I love the miscellaneous kind of secret ones that are out there. They don't tell you them. You know, they don't spoil anything like that. You know, you get your classic ones. You beat a chapter, of course, you get that one there. You get ones for the different endings and so on like that. But there's so many like little ones that like if you know you just you kill an enemy a certain way, or you do this, or you dodge this, or something like that. That'll give you all these like tiny little achievements throughout the way. Like really, like right before we started this game or we started this podcast. One of the last achievements that I got was that like on ending, I guess you would say 2 or whatever I finished. There was literally one for like if you dodge the arrows, which is funny. It's like I felt like I dodged everything else. I don't think I did dodge. I think I got hit by every other attack, but for some reason I dodged the arrows and it had a 1% like people have got this. It's just like there's just so many cool little ones there, you know, or even just ones like there's a boss battle later on where Hinako, because the whole point, like, I guess the very core story of this game is that, you know, kill your friends, kill your parents, kill yourself. That is like the concept of it. But then when you get to the part where you have to battle your parents, if you kill your dad first in his monster form and so on like that, you get an achievement for that, you know.
Yep. Yeah, and I noticed quite a few of those. One that I don't want to spoil it quite yet, but the last ending that I got in ending 3 or whatever. So in that fight, the the boss is basically spawning a whole bunch of other, water enemy and whatnot. So I got an achievement that says defeat all summoned monsters before putting blah 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 to bed, or to end or whatever, kill it. More or less meaning beating the boss. But that was a 8.3% one, and like it was funny, like talking percentages back and forth, because you're playing on Xbox, I'm playing on Steam, and slowly but surely I've been watching these numbers rise like over the last week or so. But like a lot of them they haven't. I really think a lot of people are just completing ending 1 and just dropping it and just not playing past that, which really is a shame. But anyways,
I do kind of get it though, because it is like, I remember when I first saw all those endings, I'm like, do they expect you to play the game 5 times over or whatever? Like, Jesus. Like, and then I kind of realized that no, you can kind of milk it, and you can get all, you pretty much could do this in 3, because I realized I thought I was going to be able to get all the endings in my second playthrough, but I got 3 of the extra endings in that one there. So there's one bonus ending that you have to do at least the 3rd playthrough, because where there's a statue that you have to give this fox pendant thing to, there's the red flower stuff's in the way, and I'm like,
yeah.
See, and I thought what it was, because it checks them off like in your options menu every single time you get an ending. So I thought the game was gonna I was gonna game the system there, and it was gonna be like, oh, okay, it's gonna see that I have the check mark there because you have to have the 2 complete endings, and it never did work out like that. But it was kind of a bummer, because I was like, that means I have to go through all the way through. Oh, okay, I'll think about that. That's the only thing, I do kind of wish that everything kind of was like in maybe 2 plays, because, I feel that that's where, everybody's kind of like probably tolerance for going through the game. It's not that the game's ridiculously long, but it is a fraction longer enough that you might not want to play it so many times over and over and over unless you're really into Silent Hill.
Yep. And that's definitely like where I came from. Like mine was, there's my son. So, upon completing, hello, I'm doing podcast, okay? Upon completing my first run was about 9.5-ish hours, almost like 10, roughly, like in game though. I think at Steam at that point was telling me I was around like 14, maybe 15 hours, something like that in real time. So that was super interesting. Second run was roughly about half that, by the time I completed a full-on New Game Plus into the fog run, it was like 4.5, almost 5 hours, something like that in game time. I think by that point, like my Steam counter had clocked up to around like 22, 23-ish hours. So it's probably about 8, in real time, to actually get it done. But it's just long enough, to where like even at 5 hours, it's like it's just long enough to where by the time I got around to my 3rd run of the game, I was like, okay, I can see like a lot of people aren't going to see this all the way through, and it's really a shame because of the cool stuff that we get to see and know and learn, through each playthrough. So
yeah, I mean, it's like a double whammy, because it's like it actually has probably one of the best New Game Pluses that I actually have ever seen in a game, where it gives you a lot more story stuff. It really like layers on through the notes, through the extra new cutscenes, and even has a cool feature that like when you go to press a button like you're going to skip a cutscene, it will tell you if it's a new or old cutscene. I'm like, that's actually really cool. So you'd always click it just to see, is this a new scene? Oh, okay, cool, this is a new one. Okay, And sometimes it'd be like one of those ones like they'd have the most minor difference in there that, you had the hardest time figuring out like, okay, well, what was different in that scene? So there's some more flowers on the stairs. Oh, okay, I guess that's it. But, yeah, no, it adds a lot there. But it's like at the same time, it's like you do have some upgrades and so on like that. But I guess it's not like Resident Evil 4 that like, there's a lot of things you can upgrade and different things you can kind of get when you're doing your like, even though none of the story stuff changes when you do a New Game Plus in that game, it does have a lot more upgrade stuff. Where this one, you have your core abilities and, perks and, your health and stamina and, all that kind of stuff you can. But, there's maybe not as much there, but if it was any more than 3 playthroughs, I feel like that would probably be a little too much, but it does seem like you can kind of maximize it in about 3 solid. But that still is kind of a lot. Two is about the perfect number. 3 is definitely like, okay, here we go. Then like, let's go through this one more time. Because there's like in any game, it's like there's some scenes that are like, they're great the first time around, but when you have to kind of go through them again and again, you're like, okay, here we go again.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, I think probably the number one exonerating thing about the multiple playthrough things here is that at least the game tells you, hey, this is brand new content you've never seen, like Spence said, or it just says skip, and then like if you just have a straight up skip button, you've already seen it, just skip past it, move on. But and even then, like the differences between run 1 to run 2 to run 3 or whatever, like there's some scenes that are significant. They're vastly different, but there's other ones that are just so minor that I had to go back and like look at my original runs footage and go like, what, and throw them side by side and go like, what is the difference? It's like a flower in the corner, it's like, what, a lot of stuff that you just wouldn't know, like you wouldn't see or whatever, so like I think that what I'm really curious about is like inevitably somebody probably already has it, some as is, but I would love to see the comparison videos of like a compilation video on YouTube where it's just like, here's where ending 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, here's all the core differences per scene, of like what changed, and what because the piece that you can control in this that does change pretty significantly is the notes. Yeah. So the fact that notes change, that items change, that weapons change, and like every single run that you're doing, the layout, the map design, like everything is exactly the same, but there's so many variations of like playthrough to playthrough that it's worth your while to fully invest into another exploratory run, and it's more or less like where I'm at on my current run, trying to get ending 2 right now, is like, because there are so many achievements of collect all the things, collect all the notes, collect all the diaries, the journals, all those types of things. But at the same time, like I think that the game is concise enough to where you can speed run it the way that I did the last 2 runs, to like get it down to 5 hours and skip most of the enemies and skip the like the cutscenes that I've already seen and blah blah blah. So I'm very mixed, man. Like I don't know, I really don't know how to feel about it, because I've very 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 much have enjoyed my whole experience here. But I don't think an average gamer would. So.
Well, yeah, I just don't think they'd want to go through multiple times. And one, there's just so many games out there to play. You have to be really into it for it. But if you are, I do love the extra like details and stuff that it really adds into it. But it is kind of a bummer because they do sort of lock that story into like, what, you didn't play it like 2 or 3 times more, like like, but you better get at it, because. Even like the second time I went through it, like I watched everything again. I didn't skip any of the cutscenes because I felt like I was still taken in, because now I have more knowledge from the game that when I see these earlier cutscenes, they start adding up a bunch more stuff. Because I mean, even we never even got into like really the core story of this yet, but like the fact is, you start off as Hinako and you see that you got this drunken dad who's just yelling at your mom and everything like that. It's like drunk dad ending in like Silent Hill Shattered Memories. Except for it's Japanese, so it seems a little bit more intense. But but she's like, whatever, see you. And like, she like, walks out on her family and is like, I'm going to go hang out with my friends today. And then lo and behold, it just turns into a day of Silent Hill where, that's weird. The fog set in and nobody else is in town. Oh, okay. And so, as Hinako, you go and find your friends. You find Shu, who is like pretty much your best friend. And it's a dude that you played Space Wars with, which I liked how they tied the UFO into like a real thing in this one. So it's like, as kids, you were really into sci-fi stuff. It's the 60s, 50s, that's when all the sci-fi movies and stuff are real big and so on. So you and Shu are these good buddies. You grew up, but it's kind of an interesting relationship because it's like almost like Hinako's so tomboyish, that her and Shu get along like they're the best of buds, and it's weird because it's 60s style, so it's like if this was the 90s, nobody would question this one bit, but since it's like the 60s, it's kind of like, you're not being a woman, you need to stay away from this boy and his ray gun. I do not know what this ray gun is. Exactly. Sounds like slang. So you get that kind of going on. And then Hinako's got like 2 other somewhat friends. I don't know if you call these people friends, but she's got what the hell's Sakuko, who if the first time around this game, like this girl's just practically like out of the picture right off the bat. Like I didn't know very much about her. Like it was more like when the details stack, because she's kind of quiet. She dies like literally like less than 2 hours into the game.
Yep.
I mean, chapter 2. So like, nothing about her right away. You learn later on that she's like she's a shrine maiden, but she's special ed. She's got like autism. I found a note in her, like, when I was asking you about like, do you ever find a key for any of those boxes? I finally found that key. And you open up, you get achievement for it too, for opening mail.
Yeah.
But you go to her house and you find out that she actually got a doctor's notice that she was actually like autistic and so on like that.
Yep.
So she's got all these kind of issues, and then you got Rinko, who's just the total bitch of like a backstabbing two-faced friend who will talk to you like she's your best friend, but really at the end of the day she just wants to see you dead, because she wants you, and she does not like the idea that you as this tomboy can be friends with this guy and so on like that. And it's just like, even just her face has so much pure evil in it, where the first time around, like the other chick Sakuku, like I was kind of like I don't know, I knew nothing about this person, like I don't know like why she's like dying here and all this kind of stuff, and later on you kind of learn that like, oh no, she kind of like is totally backstabbing you too. None of these people are your friend except for Shu. She was the only one, which I thought he was going to turn on you. I actually thought, because of how everything else was going, I was like, dude, I don't know about this Shu guy, like what's he going to do? But he actually doesn't, and especially in the super happy ending, like no, he's still your guy.
Yeah. There is so much to talk about story wise. Just because like every new playthrough, like things fucking change and you learn so much more. I'm still like not even close to being confident to fully explaining to our audience like what this game properly is and what it like. I've got so many ideas and I've got so many theories in my head of like what is going on, and I think that that's really the driving factor of what got me to play this so many times over, and why I will continue to play this over. It's very unfortunate that Battlefield 6 came out today or yesterday, because like
it didn't help that Ghost of Yote also came out like literally like right after this game. I think was it the same day? That they might have came out the same day. I could be wrong, but they're very close.
Yeah, just about the same.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a bad month anyways, because then it's like, if you thought like, you're going to be able to catch up, wait a second, Pokemon comes out next week, and if I got the Final Fantasy Tactics, remaster or whatever the heck, I haven't even booted that up.
That's you? Damn.
Yeah, that came out the same day as Silent Hill as well, or the same week at least. So there's kind of a flood of games. So that the downfall is that might actually, if you're really into Silent Hill, cool, but there's so many other games that this game might just get kind of pushed out of the way because of that.
Yeah.
But
yep.
It's like I've sort of pieced things together, but you just keep getting more and more clues and so on. Like, I really think at the end of the day, what it is Hinako's this girl who's legitimately just a really good person. She just wants to do the best. She's really into sports. She's into boy things. It's the 60s, so of course people are like trying to like say like, oh, you can't be an athlete. You can't hang out with the boys and all this stuff. You should be literally at home cooking, and getting your dad another beer, because that's the lifestyle it is. And I think it's like she's got like a split personality, or not. She's two ways she kind of feels. There's angry Hinako, who's just really pissed at like the world, pissed at her friends, pissed at her parents, and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the other Hinako who's just like, I just really want to live a good life. Like, why is that? Yeah. Why can't I just be me? And you go back and forth with these characters, and being set into these two different realms and taking each one of like Hinako's like almost like dark side and Hinako's like sort of light side, and going through it.
So I think one way to extenuate that to our audience as talking is if we treat the one that wants to just kind of remain in the past and have everything be the same that it's always been, and she's best friends with Shu and all this, if we call her by her, I guess it would be like her actual name, what is it, Shimizu Hinako?
Yeah,
is the name or whatever.
Because if I'm not mistaken, I think Japanese names, they go last name first, then first name,
and then first name. Because that was something that as multiple playthroughs moved onwards and I got a different ending, it's brought up in that run that like Hinako definitely, like, this game is a split personality game, and it makes so much more sense, like, because on initial run, like, you're gonna play through this you're gonna see the dark world areas that you go to, you're gonna see the real world areas you go to, and there's really not gonna be a whole lot of context surrounding that. But you know, in multiple endings and whatnot, like seeing what I got to see, like, yeah, Dark World Hinako is more or less like she wants to basically do what is expected of her, you know, like she wants to be the, you know, the wife of, you know, like this planned marriage. She wants to, you know, like more or less like kill off everything that has ever happened in her entire life, you know, reset her, you know, life at that point, and then move into a new life and be accepting of that. Whereas real world Hinako is just like, no, fuck that. You know, like I want everything to stay the same, and like, you know, has a really hard time with change and whatnot. And this game is just, I'd say, like in general, it's Hinako's own internal battle, you know, of what she thinks is right, you know. Yeah, and there's so much surrounding that, you know. So,
well, because it's like one of those ones, like, you know, you also have Hinako's sister, who she's kind of just there in the first run, but she's really prevalent in that second run. She a lot of times like shows up in so many more cutscenes. I think her name's Junko. And the whole point was that Junko kind of had, you know, she was, when Hinako was younger, she was married off, and, you know, she kind of disappeared. So she hasn't really been in the life for a while, but she's kind of setting the standard of like, oh, this is what kind of happens. You know, you get married and so on like that. And then you pretty much go off and have to serve, you know, this new husband or whatnot. You know, you learn kind of later on of like Hinako's thing is that like, she's just, once again, Hinako just wants she wants to be like an American and have choice, and, you know, none of this like old school Japanese like thing. You learn later that like, the dad actually has sort of sold you off because he's got some, you know, debt because he's an alcoholic, and, you know, he can't get anything done, and all his dreams went crashing down and so on. And they don't bring this in here, but I bet you there's a lot of post World War II problem with that too. Because 100%. I know that's one of the biggest things. That's the same thing of like Germany and so on like that too, is so many of those guys are so just like depressed and angry. Because the fact when like nobody thinks about, but like when you truly lose a war, like what does that do to like the psyche of all your like people of that age range, you know, like they literally go home like failures and so on like that, and the whole world hates you and all that kind of stuff, you know. So that's probably like once again, they don't bring any of that up into this here, but I can only imagine, because it is 60s, that he probably was some form of a World War II veteran of some kind, or at least very involved in that era. You know. 100%. So the fact is that a lot of stuff's not worked out for him his whole life and so on like that. And the fact that like things are just kind of crashing down. And in some scenes, he seems like he wants to play out like he was trying to be a good dad, but then it all went crashing down. You know, I actually thought the dad was actually gonna be a lot worse than they kind of make him out in this game. I think he's bad dad, but he's not like ridiculously abusive. Like I kind of almost thought the game was gonna be, because at first I was like, oh, I wonder how bad this father can get, and then you kind of realize you're like, well, he's almost just like you take Drunk Dad ending from Silent Hill Shattered Memories and just go a little bit farther. You just make him Japanese, so then it seems just a little bit more angry.
Yeah, and yeah, I very much agree with that. Like I was expecting a whole lot like more horrific shit, you know, like because like it's something else we failed to mention. The start of this game straight up gives you a fucking warning. It's just like, here's what the game's about, and if you don't like it, you better call somebody, you know, like more or less. Yeah. Because I was expecting like some, you know, child sexual abuse or something, you know, like something like that, and that really never happened.
The worst thing the dad did is he one time threw a kitchen knife, but he threw it at the ground at Hinako. So it's not like, so he was drunk, he threw a knife. I mean, that's bad, but like, it could have been worse. Like he was like literally beating her or something like that. And it could have gone so many other ways. And it's that weird thing at the end there. You're like, oh, it wasn't that bad actually. You know, he's still there. They're still married.
yeah, exactly. You know, but Hinako's, just resentment towards him, towards, you know, because like you hear it in conversations with her and Junko and some of those cutscenes and whatnot too. Hinako has like this very, very extremely skewed view of men in general, and it's part of the time era. It's part of, you know, being married off, like not having that choice, you know, and whatnot. And I really think like a lot of Hinako's like self story, like character arc is just becoming accepting of those things, like we've mentioned, and like how she becomes, like the perfect wife, and being okay with it, but also like witnessing her mom deal with, verbal abuse and alcoholism and shit like that. I'm not even sure if you even recognize in the, we'll get to the boss fights eventually and we'll explain their mechanics and everything, but in the fight where you fight mom and dad, like the dual fight or whatever, did you ever see the backside of mom in that fight, her design?
No, I don't think I did.
So I originally, like when I was first doing that fight, I was focusing everything on her because she was the fast, nimble one, and whatnot. Whereas Dad was like the fat, lumbering, like heavy attack one. So in doing that, again, going back to my comment about not locking onto enemies and being able to loop around them pretty easily because my camera's not focused on them. I started to notice, and I wish I could have got the fucking screenshot out of it so I can send it to you, but I noticed that her back is completely ripped open. She doesn't have a spine. Meaning, like,
yeah,
so
she's spineless. Yeah, interesting.
Exactly, and like the amount of visual shit that's in this game that's just like that. There's so much of that, like everywhere and stuff. So like again, it's like because we know that this is Hinako's mind, creating these things, like these scenarios, these these boss fights, these like this is Hinako's mind and whatnot. Like that's very much how she's viewing most women, is that they're all fucking spineless, and the women or the men rule the world and this, that, and the other, and are very controlling and yada yada. Like I said, the parallels that exist throughout this whole experience, whether it be written in notes, visually shown on the screen, and just art design and whatnot, versus like your own thoughts of like culminating everything together. There's so much good here, that like really makes you think. It's super cool.
Well, even speaking on the mom, the last ending that I got, which was ending 2, when you get to like the post-credit section of that ending and it has its final cut scene, and this is the one where Hinako accepts being married off and goes along with it, is that she's literally screaming and like yelling, and you just hear her like going on as she's like being calmly brought back in, but you hear it like almost like it's internal monologue, and then she goes, "I've become my mother," and then there's her face is literally on the ground. There's all this blood that leads up to it, and then it gets smashed. And that's like her biggest fear, is that she's going to become like her mom, and she's going to be forcely, have to listen to like the dad, because that's the whole point. The dad, like really what makes him, I guess, bad is because he yells at mom. He gets pissed when she cooks. He throws beer bottles at her. He just wants to sit around and drink and so on like that. And he's typical like trailer park drunk dad, that happens to live at the top of the hill up here. So.
Yeah.
He literally is like king of the castle of this town.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so there's that, and then the mom just kind of goes along. Oh, it's just your father. He just is him. He's you should have saw him when I first met him. Boy, was he a nice fella.
Yep.
So
back in the 1930s when he was
back before they dropped 2 fucking nuclear bombs on our like country. He was such a cheerful guy.
Funny.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised they really actually don't bring any of that stuff up. I don't know if that's one of those weird ones nowadays. They're like, we don't want to create any kind of feuds between America and Japan anymore. That's why I think that like you actually don't see any like World War II levels or games that take place in Japan for the most part too often. I felt like they kind of got that point where Japan's like, yo, no. We don't need to be. You don't need to be shooting Japanese people on a PlayStation.
Yeah.
I think that there came to be like, that's why like that kind of genre went away. Be like, shoot Germans all you want, but nope. Yeah.
Yep.
That's why you never got a Sniper Elite game where it takes place in like the Japan conflict.
Yeah.
But I really do think that that's kind of it. I think that Sony said something like, yeah, I'm not too sure about this, because those games all kind of disappeared after like the 2000s. Yeah. But just including maybe a couple levels.
But it taking place in the 1960s, like I think a lot of that is just straight up implied. Like it doesn't outright say like the war and the blah blah, like things like that. But it's obvious like that's a little fucked in the head, and that's probably why.
Yeah. So yeah, you have those, and then once again you get back to like the group of friends that Hinako has, and just how pissy, like it was just Rinko in general, just like when you just keep finding her notes and how she wants Shu like to alter himself, And even the fact that, like, she would be friends with Hinako if Hinako did everything she'd want, but the second that she does anything like out of line, and that same goes with Sakuko as well too, because there's even a note I remember she had where, like, she was pissed at Hinako for running ahead of them in gym class, because Hinako's into track and field and all that stuff, and she wanted her to, stay back with, her and Rinko and, do that girl cult thing where it's like, no, like, if you're not one of us, I don't know if we can be friends type thing. And just even so much stuff. I mean, like, even that part where Rinko, like, somehow, some way pushes you down the stairs. It cuts differently, so you're never 100% sure. But, like, just that facial expression of her, it's like,
oh yeah, Well, and that's something to talk about too. Is just like with Rinko's character in general. Like, it is blatantly obvious. The very first time you see Rinko even appear for the first time, she runs up. Like, you're sitting on a bench with Shu at this point. And she runs up and she's like, "Oh, Shu, like, you waited for me," and blah blah blah. And then she, like, immediately recognizes you're sitting right next to him and whatnot, and just glares at you and whatnot. And it's that young preteen, teenage whatever, just like angst, of just like, why are you with my man, and blah blah blah, and this, that, and the other, even though Shu has like no interest in her like whatsoever other than being a friend. So I mean, there's a lot of that, and just like, the amount of just anger that fucking chick has, dude. Like, especially in the ending 3 run that I did, dude. Like, her notes are just going through the school section, dude, was insane, dude. The amount of shit that she's talking about Hinako, and just like, and the whole time too is like, even in like the first run, even through like the next couple runs and whatnot too, she is constantly referring to Hinako as dead anyways.
Yeah.
To Shu. And every time that was brought up, because she's very much like saying it under her breath so Hinako can't hear her or whatever. But every time that comes up in the scene or whatever, especially in my first run, I'm like, are we dead? Like, are we just like a ghost? Like, like, what's actually going on in this game? And blah blah blah. It didn't end up being the case or whatever. But there's a lot of like wishful death upon Hinako, from Rinko's angle. Sakuko, like, I still don't really know a whole lot about. I did catch some of those notes that you were talking about from mom to doctors and whatnot, notes back and forth about that. Sakuko's like whole thing is like, from when you first run into her, which is the very first NPC you run across in the game in general, is that she's up in her room up in this upper story or whatever. You're walking through this alleyway, and like, Hinako looks up, or she just hears the word, "You traitor," it's like all you hear, and it's like, what the fuck? And you like look up, and Sakuko's up there in her room or whatever, and she mentions it like a good 2 or 3 times in that same conversation about "you traitor," and like the traitor term comes back multiple times throughout the run too. But I don't know what Hinako really did to Sakuko. Like, I don't quite understand like what actually happened.
Yeah, I'm really confused by that one too, even with like the extra notes. See, Rinko, right off the bat, it's just because Rinko wants Shu. Like, that one's clear as day. That's why, and the fact that, like, Hinako wasn't being the perfect friend. Because there's even a part, like, I think it's Rinko, where you find the note where she's like got the rabbits or whatever, and she names that one rabbit Hinako and stuff like that. And then, like, at the first round, I think they just have the note and she just talks about the rabbit. She's just talking to the rabbit like a crazy person, that she named it Hinako. And then the second one, I remember I found a note where the rabbit named Hinako, she's like, "I'm gonna cut your arms and legs off and everything like that, like, when I get back home today, because you pissed me off or whatever," and so like that. So it's like she's getting real mental and so on like that. Where Sakuko is one of those ones I just don't. Yeah, I don't know as much what the heck the beef was between her and Hinako, And of course, Shu is just like complete anime boy, where he's just like doesn't realize that all these girls like him, and he's just like very like oblivious to it, but he almost doesn't really want them either. It's like the Tenchi Muyo thing going on here. Yeah. And even like, because his personality too, for the fact that like he almost like sometimes, even though he's Hinako's friend, he, like, I guess the thing that I kind of thought going through it, like why I thought he might turn on you is because he never still stood up for you as much as I thought he should have. Like when Rinko's just talking shit, like mad shit, like, you know, about Hinako, you think that like if they're supposed to be best friends, like he just kind of like it goes over his like head and just he doesn't like think much of it. Or he does some weird shit too, where like, you know, him and Rinko, like when you get to the school, they're like, we're just gonna sit here and take a nap, and then Hinako's like, whatever, I'll go get the key. Screw you guys, you know, and so on like that, you know. So there was some weird stuff like that, but then it kind of turns out like once you get farther into it, it's like, okay, I guess no, he's, you know, he's not actually going to turn on you the same way that the others do.
Yeah, and we learned some. I don't know when we want to get into his real arc either, but we learned some like real deep shit about him and in subsequent runs about like his family lineage, where he comes from, who he is, what his thoughts and feelings are about Hinako and this whole world and whatnot. And I guess like I mean, I don't know. Spoilers are off the table at this point, I suppose.
Yeah, I feel that's the only way you can discuss this game. But at the same time, I'll say like even if you hear all this stuff, it doesn't take away from seeing it all and experiencing it all.
You have to experience this because even because I did go and I watched ending 2 just because I wasn't able to complete it by the time we did this episode.
Well, that's the thing. I watched ending 4 because I thought I was going to be able to, and then I realized I'm like, oh, I have to do a whole brand new run for this. Never mind. My game plan of trying to get all 4 endings in one run was not going to work out.
But in my experience so far, even getting like, because I've so just for the audience's awareness, I've done ending 1, which everybody gets at that's default. You're going to get that first ending. I've done partial half runs here and there and kind of fucked up some requirements to get some of the other endings. But I have completed an ending 3 run. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, I've done ending 1 twice. Once in story mode, once in fucking Into the Fog, and then when I switched over, I got ending 3. But what I find super interesting about the endings is you can watch them on YouTube. You can do the compilation video. You can see all the different endings, but you're really not going to have a whole lot of context without playing through the experience leading up to those endings because of the variations of the way the notes work, the journal works, the you know, like everything that you're getting per run, you know, is very. Without the context, those endings don't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, yeah, okay, we're going to spoil the final boss, you know, like, I mean, cool, you know, like whatever. But leading up to that, everything leading to that point, like you have to experience it, you know? So, but Shu, basically is just like, he comes from a long line lineage of herbologists and whatnot. And this game centers so heavily around these little red and white pills, you know. It's in all the marketing, it's in all the, you know, like so many cutscenes, so many different things. Like it's a fucking healing item in this game, you know, like these little red and white pills that Shu gives you right at the start of the game. You go to find him or whatever, you sit down next to him. This is the scene with Rinko that we were just explaining, and Sakuko shows up. But directly before Rinko and Sakuko shows up, Shu hands over to Hinako this little box or whatever and has these little red and white pills, and he's like, oh, for your headaches. So we, right off the bat, right there, we understand like there's something wrong with Hinako, you know, like right out the get-go. She's having these headaches and yada yada. What I found out in my run, and I don't know, and I'm really curious because you just did ending 2 to kind of see what the differences are. So in my run, like in ending 3, I found out that he is highly involved with herbology, comes from a long lineage of family members that are like doctors and yada yada and this, that, and the other. And then this is where the tie to actual Silent Hill, like you know, American version Silent Hill, like actually like comes into play. Is the White Lotus, the little flowers and whatnot. Because in that run, I was able to like go to his house. I found some of those notes and whatnot, and they're talking about how this plant only grows around, you know, water and whatnot. So you go out backside of his property and you see the shit, and it's a direct tie back to Silent Hill 1, 2, and you know, like all that, the cult, like all that type of stuff. So like that's more or less like where the Silent Hill-ness of this game comes into play. But what he's doing is he's drugging the shit out of Hinako, trying to get her to change her mind about this planned marriage that she agreed to, and want to, you know, more or less like break off and run away with him, you know. And it's this whole whole like selfish, like side of him that you don't see until you've played it multiple times, so like Spence was saying, like right out the get-go, he seems like kind of a goober, for the first run, but like, dude, when you start to, and that can be said about any character, but once you start to dive into, the inner mindset, the actual character narrative, the arc, where they come from, what their intents are, all this type of stuff. When I say this game is creepy, this game is fucking creepy, dude. Like reasons like that, and it really got under my skin when I was reading all his notes about how obsessive he is over Hinako and whatnot, like it's really gross, so.
Yeah, I just how pissed he is, because then there's the other main character, I guess, is the Fox Man, who that's the one that Hinako is marrying, but he's the one in the Dark Realm who, has got this like fox mask just like stapled to his head and whatnot, but he's dressed all like elegantly and in these flowy robes and seems kind of mystic and everything like that. And yeah, Shu hates this dude like nobody's business and whatnot. But those red pills, like I thought for the longest time, the first time you gave me, you're like, cool, so this is a the weak medicine. Okay, cool. You pop them, and they give you a little bit of health, and they give you a little bit of better than health is they would you make your sanity go up. Because you need your sanity for your special attack. First, when I saw that sanity bar, I was thinking, oh, it's gonna be like Eternal Darkness or something like that, or even like in just in Chronos we were playing, where like weird shit was going to happen, like when your sanity goes down, but it has nothing to do with that. It's literally just your special bar, you know. And I think you start to lose health if you totally blow that and then start to focus. I don't know. It never seemed to be too much of an issue. The only downfall is I just felt like when I ran out of it, I'm like, oh, I can't do my focus special attack anymore, or I can't do the thing where I slow them down to see the counter attack. But beyond that, that's what it was. And it's like, then you get to that first ending, and then you realize it has this really interesting one where it's just like, oh, there was this wedding massacre and so on like that, and this lady killed everybody there and so on like that. It almost feels like it's something that'll Kill Bill even. And they're like, all we found was these red, ibuprofen pills all over the place here.
Yep.
So you had these, and it's like, I'm like, boy, I probably took like 50 of those pills throughout my run. I use those all the time. Didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was one of the, like, why do we have 5 different like plus first aid things? Because you have the red pills, you got bandages, you got first aid kits, which first aid kits are almost terrible because they just take up so much space in your inventory. That, like, I was just tossing them out practically because it's like, whatever, bandages are good enough. And then to top it off, then you have all the Japanese like food items that you could also just like sell them off instead for faith, which that's pretty much what they were. So many times it reminds me like that same problem that like we've said since like Dino Crisis 2. It's like, why do we have to have so many different like first aids? Can't you just have like one or two? Can't you just have like a light one and then like a full recovery? Like, I feel like just make it real. That doesn't need to be that complex, But whatever. Those pills though turn out to be an interesting thing. And even though, because the game tells you that there's these 5 endings, because mostly nobody knows that right off the bat, that don't take these red pills. Nothing tells you in the game that like that's going to be a problem whatsoever. Except for maybe Donald Trump just recently.
Would have been
the only. Maybe that was all tied into Silent Hill. It's just like, oh shit, it causes autism, which it caused autism in Sakuga. So. It was all very worldly all of a sudden, but beyond that, you take those. I'm kind of surprised that there's actually not like another ending that you can kind of get. Like, because what happens if you didn't take the red pills at all for a starter round? Would that ending still have that same thing? I mean, like, it doesn't say anything about it. I never read anything about that, but it feels like that should be like its own bonus ending.
I don't know. I don't know what would happen. I'd be curious if it would trigger ending 2 or 3, but you have to get ending 1 done as far as I'm aware, in order to. So like the way that this game works is like, when you create a brand new game, you have to play through its totality of its experience. You get a set ending, and then you unlock 4 other endings at that point. So into a new game plus cycle, but you have to play on that new game plus cycle to get ending 2, 3, 4, or the special ending or whatever. So here, like, I'd be really curious to see like if there's any difference, and if there is, maybe it's not based off its ending, but maybe it's about you know, because like this drug is more or less like it, the way that I see it anyways, it's a suppressant for her, you know, like for these like crazy mental, you know, things and whatnot. And you see a lot of that in the differences between ending one or run one versus my second run, is that a lot of the cutscenes change. And because I'm not using those pills and whatnot, there's a beautiful scene that happens pretty early on or whatever, where Hinako's like running, and she like collapses in the middle of this like four square that's in the middle of the town or whatever, and you're looking out into the distance. And the way that in ending one, as I'm taking red pills and whatnot, like the scene is like fading away, but it has like all this like red burning, like it looks like a piece of paper basically like burning away or whatever. Whereas in the second run where I wasn't taking pills, none of that effect happened like whatsoever. It was just a foggy, you know, town. And then, you know, and the other core difference being is that Shu actually shows up in that scene too. You know, he just like runs over and falls on top of Hinako, like Hinako, you know. But you know, again, like having those core differences with the red pill, I'd be so curious to see what a brand new game, don't take red pills, what happens. You know, like, to see if there's something different with even just cutscenes throughout the game. So.
Yeah, because realistically, to trigger the other cutscenes, you have to get the sword pretty much. So the special sword that you need the 5 idols for, and yada yada yada. There's a lot of effort that has to go into just getting that. So it would the only thing I guess it wouldn't trigger that post credit scene if that's the case. Because that was the only part that really explained the red pill thing, was that very last, you know, at the total end of the credits, where it shows like the wedding massacre, which really doesn't. I kind of was expecting that to be more explained in some of those other endings, and it never did. You know.
So the way that I see it is that early, again, don't know anything for 100% certain. This is just my theory about that scene. So as Spence mentions, at the very end of your first run, you get past the ending, you get through the credits, and then a special scene plays like most games will. And really all it is like, it's just this panning shot of like a parking lot, more or less, with just like some blood on the ground. You see like police lights, you know, like, you know, going off and whatnot. And you just hear this radio call between a couple of different police officers of just like, yeah, this 20, and they mention 20 years old. They mention wedding, they mention knife attack, and red pills is like the like 4 things that they mention or whatever. So it's heavily implied that Hinako is somewhere around the age of like 14, 15 in the game that we're playing.
Yeah.
So this is what I think this is. And again, at the time of you doing this, you don't have the context of the other playthroughs that I have at this point. But now having that in my head, basically I think what happens is that Hinako goes along with the wedding. She, you know, like dad's going to marry her off and whatnot. Why it took 5 years, I don't fucking know. But, you know, like she's 20 years old at this point. She goes along with that wedding, fucking goes crazy, you know, with her red pills and whatnot, kills all the guests, which ended up being mom, dad, Rinko, Sakuko. So basically the events of the game is like, it's her recollection of her killing all of her friends and family and whatnot. But in real life, that happened at her wedding, is the way that I viewed that scene. So, I mean, like I said, there's so many different ways to cut that. But I think ultimately that's what it is that she went along with the wedding. She remained on her red pills that whole time and just went fucking crazy, you know, and ended up killing everybody. So in ending 2, the one that you got, from what I understand, like it's basically the ending where Hinako's okay with getting married and goes along with the Wolfman and like actually gets married.
Yeah, so in that one, she pretty much she's gonna get married with the Foxman guy, and she's fine with it. And Shu comes running there, and he clobbers him with a baseball bat. And that guy's like, oh, just sitting there like, I can't believe somebody would come in here and just hit me with a baseball bat. Like, you know, my Japanese pride won't take this. That boy's gonna die, I tell you. And Hinako's goes like, whoa, let me go talk to him, okay, like that. He's like, oh, you know. And then you go out there to talk to Shu in the hallway, and he's just like, dude, Hinako, what the fuck? Like, I thought we were going to get married. I'm 15. Like, my whole life was planned out. Like, I got a ray gun and everything for you, And she's like, you know what? I think this is just the best way. Like, look at my face. Look at my fox arm. You never even, for some reason, you don't even notice that. And so on. And then you end up, and then what happens is that, like, doll thing, like, turns Shu into a monster, so it's a completely different boss battle. So you actually have like 3 different boss battles in the very end, and technically the 4th one is like a combination of these 2 other endings. So he turns into this, like, Shu turns into this giant monster with a bunch of heads that swirl around, kind of almost very Japanese style. And so you fight Shu, and you have a big old conversation throughout that battle of, him kind of telling you how much he liked you and how you're saying, like, no, we're still like the best of friends and all that kind of stuff. And then you defeat him, and then the fox guy comes out and stuff, and then him and Shu are kind of having like literally like a chest puffing like moment. Like, Shu's like, well, yo, if you do anything to Hinako, you piss her off, I'm gonna be coming for you, man. And he's all like, that ain't your fucking problem now. She's my woman. And so like that, be like, don't you talk about my woman that way. And Hinako's like, yo, I'm nobody's possession. He's like, you can stay out of this, woman. This is man business. And then the fox guy's like, you know what? You're about the only other guy who respects Hinako the way that I do. I think we should be friends. And then, Shu kind of gives him this look like, whatever, man. And then he turns around and he like puts his fist up. It's kind of weird, like, because I'm like, it's strange, like. And then the fox guy's like, oh, that's weird. He didn't shake my hand or anything. He's like kind of an ass. And they go up and they do a weird fist bump thing, which I feel like a fist bump in the 1960s. I'm like, I'm not saying people didn't do that, because the fist bump's been around for a long time, but it felt like it was weird, because it almost looks like the fist bump out of like the Avengers movie. And so and so they kind of go, oh, whatever, we'll work together. And so then she does, and then you have that post ending that I was talking about where she realizes she became her mom.
Interesting.
So that one was cool. I think the 3rd one, though, where like you have to battle the fox guy, I really like that one. I thought that was interesting, where Shu comes in to save the day, and then you fight off the fox man. He turns into this giant, like, it looks like almost like an evil Pokemon, like Ninetales or something like that.
Yeah, it's literally that. I mean, this is the ending that I got. Well,
because I got both those ones, because I did the thing where I just reverted my save. Yeah, because I saved right before you right when you get the sword. I saved right there, so I ran through with the unpurified sword, then I purified it, and I ran through and got the other ending, and then I was gonna run through again and get the 3rd ending, but it wouldn't let me. yeah, I gotcha.
So this is where this combat encounter, because I'm gonna revert back to like some of the combat issues that I have, because this is part of it. This fight is fucking cool as shit. It's a large open lake that you're fighting on. You got this like massive, like overcast sky that's all purple and blues, and like, the moon's out, and like it's just a gorgeous scene of like you fighting this 7-tailed fox thing, and what, again, like as a spectacle, it's so fucking cool, but as a fight with these mechanics, it just doesn't fucking work. Again, if I could block or parry, I think that this totally could have worked, but again, this is the Dark Souls fight. This is the Bloodborne fight. This is the From Software Souls-esque type fight, where you have big, large monster that barely fits on your screen when you're up close to it and whatnot. So it has a ton of attacks that like are very hard to read, just because it has 7 fucking flowing tails behind it and this like gorgeous scene behind it, and it's just visually it's like a blur to look at. It has swipe attacks, it has a chomp attack, it has like a charge attack, it has like like sweeping attacks, and like all these things. It just doesn't work with this combat model, and it was so depressing for it to happen that way, because again, like the thought of the Wolfman getting so pissed at like, when Hinako goes to more or less like go hit him or whatever, or like basically like get away from him, like divorce, like whatever, like just not marry the dude or whatever, and then Shu comes in out of there, knocks his ass out, with the baseball bat, like you said, like, so that's part of that scene. Wolfman gets fucking pissed and goes like, who is this Hinako? I don't know who this is, and blah blah blah. You're not the, like a bang wife, and blah blah blah. And like in his words about like, I've tried to be cordial with you. I've tried to do the courtship thing. I've tried to win you over, and you're doing nothing but go against me. Like, fuck you then. Like I'm going to kill you and keep the one that I like, because again, the split person, like the split thing with Hinako's character in this game. All of it, dude, all of it is so good. But the combat just ruined this fight for me, dude. Like, and it took me a good 3 or 4 times to get through it, like, and I was even like on story combat at this point, and like, I couldn't get the timing down. I just kept getting hit over and over. The nice thing is that walking into this fight, the game just overloads you with items. It's just like, here's a billion things to heal you, and it's like, oh, shit, something bad's about to happen, So I'm super mixed on this. Story, narrative, tone wise, beautiful. Combat mechanic wise, like, not really for me. I don't think it works well here.
Well, that's like, it's very similar setup to the way that the shoe boss battle is too, because it's in that same landscape and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And what I learned of both those ones is I just literally ran up there with the sword and whatever other weapons, and I just pretty much just swung. I did a lot of the light swings actually by this point, and I just would swing, dodge, swing, dodge, heal, swing, and that's it. I didn't try to put too much tactics into it because I knew I was just going to get hit anyway. So I focus on how many more hits can I get in. If my health gets to about halfway, I'll heal and rinse and repeat, and that kind of worked its way through there. But that's kind of it. It's because, it is weird because it's like Silent Hill isn't designed super well to be like a complex boss fighting game. It's cool boss. Both of those bosses are really neat and very unique. Yeah. And then it seems like on the fourth, when you get to the fourth version of the ending, you fight both those bosses and they go back and forth between the two of them, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, interesting. Because the ending here in ending 3, so like you said in ending 2, Hinako more or less turns into mom. In this ending, they defeat the Wolfman, thing. Her and Shu are able to basically just escape and like go live their lives and whatnot. So this is like technically granted, I haven't seen ending 4 yet, but I guess this is the happy ending, Hinako, Shimizu Hinako gets what she wants, and to like remain in her old life and like just go do what she wants to do and not be told what to do and how to think and how to, like all that type of stuff. It was a really cool ending to see her and Shu just like running through the town and whatnot, like poking fun at each other's like, oh, why are you wearing a tie? And, and Shu says something to the effect of, like, well, look at what you're wearing and blah, 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 and they run off in the distance and scene fades and blah, 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 happy ending. What is ending 4?
So ending 4 is you fight off both. So instead of Shu being like the monster thing there, the little doll thing, which you've never really brought up, but there's this doll throughout it that Hinako had as a kid. And she gets rid of the doll at some point because I feel like one of those things like, I'm too old for this doll. But then the doll kind of keeps coming back, and the doll's always saying like, yo, beware the fox guy. That fox guy's untrustworthy. Like, dude, he's up to no good. There's no turning back, and so on. And so you always see this kind of doll pop up, and even it pops up weirdly enough like on like Hinako's sister and everything like that, like kind of giving out advice. It's 2 steps away from like holding up a sign in the background to tell you to call this codec. It's a Konami game. It wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. But so the doll turns out to be inside where like Shu's face was in this monster, because he gets surrounded by all these like heads and so on. So the doll's there. So you're fighting the doll and you're fighting the Fox Man in the second one. And then in the ending, what it does is instead Hinako leaves with herself. So it's like she like accepts herself, both the Fox version and her. For some reason, she's missing the Fox mask at the end of the thing. I'm like, didn't they cut her face off for that? Like, how did that come back together? She still has the Fox arm. She still has the Fox arm just swinging about, no problem. But then for some reason, her face is all back together. I don't know, whatever. But they just become like, they're just like hanging out like in the town and whatnot. And they kind of mention like, I can't remember how you pronounce that town's name, but it's not how you read it. Like the way that you read it, like on the subtitles, it's like that's not how it sounds. But they literally mentioned like this town's kind of a silent, and then however you pronounce it, Ibiko or whatever that town was. And it's just her and herself, like, literally coming to terms, and like almost like they're hanging out together, but like I feel like what it is like she comes to terms and she fuses herself back together and she becomes normal. The town becomes normal. It's like the super, super happy ending. And I think it's the one too where it's like, you know what? We can get married when we feel like it, you know?
Yeah.
Like it has that kind of like no fox man, you know, even Shu can wait because, you know, and so on. So it kind of has that, and they're sort of just hanging out. So, and I was trying to think what the heck, if there was like what the post was on that one, because the post one on when you do the Foxman ending with the shoe, and it's the kind of the good one, is it does have this like radio broadcast that ends with like there was a volcanic explosion or whatever, and the whole town's being evacuated and being gassed. So then it kind of adds another like literally there's always these things that keep getting thrown into like the whole mix where it's like. Okay, so we had the wedding massacre. We now have the mysterious gas that apparently is like making the town evacuate and kill people and so on like that, but never comes back to some of this stuff ever again. You know, even another one too is this is like in town, but there's this missing poster you find initially, like when you first run through town, and it has a different girl's name on it at first, so you don't think anything of it. You just go, oh, it's Bobby Sue, whatever. You know, it has a Japanese name, not like that. But you know, you read it, and so, but then like when you come back through it later on, Hinako's name's on there, and she's the missing girl now. And so once again, that ties into weird like Rinko's like, oh, she's dead, you know, and all this stuff, which I'm still kind of confused. Like she says at one point, like, oh, I like kind of like she's meaning it like she just wants Hinako to be dead, or she's dead to me kind of thing. Right. So I don't know if it's falling into that kind of category, or once again, I'm still kind of confused of like, is Hinako actually dead, and people are like talking about her in like the past tense in a weird way. You know, there's still so many of these things that's like, I'm not 100% sure on any of this stuff.
Well, exactly, dude. And I think that's why it's so fucking neat. Like, because I mean, like I could sit here and talk about this game for probably another 10 hours or so, you know. But there's so many things to think about. There's so many variables. There's so many things that like, even if you think you've done 100% of the game, like how do you really know? You know, like with the amount of variables there are per playthrough, per, you know, run and whatnot. You know, and then on top of that, you know, like you got, and I'll have you explain it because I haven't done it myself yet either, but you know, there's the UFO ending in this game too, you know, which is traditional. And you know, even the small amount of notes and stuff that I've come across are surrounding the alien stuff, because a lot of it totally plays into this whole you know, like space cadet thing between Hinako and Shu, you know, like, you know, with the, you know, flying saucers and, you know, the ray guns and like all the shit that they have and whatnot. And then you think about the time era of like, you know, 1960s Japan. It's like, yep, like we're gearing up to go to the moon, you know, or America is anyways, you know, and like. You know, it's all the space wars and like, you know, like space races and things like that. So like when you really boil this game down from its like, I mean, this is a work of fiction, obviously, you know, but like how many real world ties there are in this, like it's so well done. It's so cool, you know, and it really opens up your mind to think about just how many different avenues of like what this story could or could not mean, you know, and everybody's going to have their own opinion. And I think that's why this is probably going to be a very long-term game in terms of talking points. I think that Konami has finally brought back Silent Hill 2 in effect, where I don't think a lot of, from what I've seen, like on social media, in the community forums on Steam and whatnot, a lot of long-term fans of especially the original games, for whatever reason, like really aren't into this. They're just like, oh, it's too combat heavy, it's too blah blah blah, this, that, and the other.
Which is so weird, because it's like, I don't get it, because I'm like, dude, Silent Hill 1 was combat heavy. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you could literally go through that game and blast every single creature that you feel like. The game wants you to sort of do that. You don't have to necessarily, you know, but like that's the weirdest one, because I'm like, dude, this game feels like is Silent Hill, like, you know, I don't know. It's like sometimes I think it's the Silent Hill 2 fans. Silent Hill 2 fans are almost a little bit different. Not Silent Hill 1, but 2 has they get kind of a little bit weird, you know, and they get very like because Silent Hill 2 fans a lot of times don't like Silent Hill 3. You know, they get strange about stuff. And maybe that's why Silent Hill 2 has been my least favorite one, is because I like the other ones, but like, I love Silent Hill 2, but like comparatively, it's like Resident Evil 2. I don't like it as much as all the other Resident Evils for the most part. It's very good, but it's not nearly as interesting as, you know, 1, 3, Code Veronica, you know, all that kind of stuff.
And even from my perspective, because like I've played 1, 2, 3 all the way through, completed them. I have played a bit of 4. We just did Shattered Memories. I never played any of the Western developed, like from 2008 to whatever, like those versions of Silent Hill games. So this for me, this was my first Silent Hill game since 4, more or less. Like since the last like proper Silent Hill game I've like actually played. So really my perspective again is 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the most part. A little bit of Shattered Memories. I really like this falls in line with how good that original trilogy was for me. Like, because again, I haven't you just got me 4 here semi recently, and I played it here and there beforehand.
And I will say this: 4 is the one where like it's a mixed match where it's like some stuff in it's like some of the coolest stuff you've ever seen, and then there's some goofy stuff in there too. Mm-hmm. Overall, I still think it's neat, but it's like it's one of those games. I remember when I first played it, I thought that game was going to be my favorite Silent Hill all the time. I was like, dude, the first couple hours of it were so good, and then it just starts bringing in some goofy elements in there that's not bad, but kind of like it pretty much puts it behind 1, 2, and 3. You're like, okay, but
Yep. Yeah, because I think like if I were gonna rate these games in terms of like best to worst, and whatnot, and worst in the context of these 4 games, like doesn't mean shit. They're all fucking great.
Yeah,
but
personal preference, I think.
Like, I think it's Silent Hill 1. I really think it's a close match between 3 and F here. Like those two, like you could flip flop them into 2 or 3, positions, whatever. And then I think it's Silent Hill 2 and then Silent Hill 4 probably. Like once I get through that. But I also think like Shattered Memories actually has like a place, somewhere in this like top 5. Like it wasn't the best game I've ever played, but story wise for reimagining, fuck, dude, it was so cool, to re-see that.
Well, I think a lot of stuff of that stuck around with me too, like more than you would think. Like it was like one of those ones, like just all the cool psychiatric scenes.
Look how many times we've referenced, Party Dad and Drunk Dad over the time. Like I mean, it's there, So,
yeah, and then even Silent Hill Homecoming was pretty sweet too. I like that one. And Downpour was the one I didn't play, and of course I looked that one up. That one's like $80 used on a 360 game. And of course it's like the only one that's not on Steam or Xbox digital. Or you get Homecoming, of course, but you can't get the Downpour. So, But yeah, it's like I personally actually think in playing this game over multiple times with Silent Hill F, I almost think it might be my second favorite Silent Hill. Number 1's always I love the Living Daylights out of that first one. But to me it's like it's definitely on par with 3, but I think I almost might even like it a little bit more than 3, even though I love 3 quite a bit too.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I really like I'm really curious to see what this does for future Konami now, because I think they made a statement with this game, coming in, especially directly off the heels, because like we just played Metal Gear Delta, and like I think that was to be expected of like what that game was going to be, how they were going to do it, this, that, and the other. They surprised me that it was straight up a 1-to-1 remake, like that really impressed me. So I was already feeling good about Konami anyways this year. And then for this to drop, like knowing that this was coming for the last couple of years, and really not watching much of anything on it. Same as always with brand new games. It's like, I try to do the blind experience as well as I can. To more like literally, like I spent a week and 2 days, a week and 3 days, and have 35 hours in the game. Like, it's fucking unheard of, like, I mean, I play games for sure, but I don't play games like that, and I even got that sense out of you. It's like, when I finished my second run, you're like, Jesus Christ, like
I'm like, I got this game 5 days. I was playing this game 5 days before you, and then you caught up to me like in like a day and a half.
Yeah. I couldn't put it down though, dude. Like it was that good, and I think that's a testament to what this game is. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's absolutely one. And there's one other piece that I do want to describe, because there's some, like I said, the game in general is fucking creepy. It's eerie. It's like, but it's that type of creep that's just like you can't put a finger on it, where it's like, oh, that's exactly it. It's just like it's the way that it does its tone, and it's like I said, like its characters. their wants and needs and ambitions that doesn't outright tell you that, but it's heavily implied, you know, so your mind goes wild at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But in this game, the thing that was horrific is it's Hinako's transformation into this wolf girl. And really what it is, it's her giving up literal pieces of herself to the Wolfman for marriage, you know. So it's her severing herself. And there's a scene where so you're in the dark world and you have to go through these rituals, and like you go to this like, you know, ritual altar thing or whatever. You sit down, Wolfman's there's all these maidens around and whatnot, and they bring out this like large, you know, like box, which is like this wolf arm in it. It's just like this grayed out, you know, like wolf arm and whatnot. They walk up to you, and then one of the maidens just like has this like really sharp, jagged blade.
It's like a saw.
It's a saw, exactly, you know. And they hand it to you, and like Hinako's like looking around, and you can just tell that her heart rate is starting to increase, and she's like starting to panic and blah blah blah. Like, what's about to happen? Wolfman comes over with this little stick, sticks it in her mouth and whatnot, and just like visually implies like, you need to take your own arm. And then she does it, dude, and it shows everything, and it's just like, you know, it's
just hack
like,
it away.
Oh my god, dude! Because I had headphones, and it's late at night, you know. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like, what am I watching? And then it gets worse, man. You know,
yeah,
so like,
the arm's not that big of a deal, realistically.
So the second ritual, and this is all over the course of like this dark zone area or dark world area or whatever, and like the second ritual, it's like you have to get branded, and like they have this large metal pole with this like leaf pattern on the back of it, and they're like flower pattern or whatever, and like it's at this point, and it goes down on two knees. Wolfman's still there, and you know, like he's about to hand her that thing to stick back in her mouth, and she's like, nah, like nah,
I can handle it.
Yeah,
the pain.
And then they press that shit against her back, and you just see her eyes, dude, and like the way they do the facial animations, and like it's just so good, so good. And then that final one, dude, really, like, I've got problems like with things that really gross me out. Fingers in general, breaking fingers, snapping, you know, like things like that. Ugh, it just gets me. Teeth is another one. Breaking teeth and pulling teeth, like I fucking hate it and whatnot. But just facial in general, like really gets to me. Like when I was fucking it's a little sidebar. When I was like 17 years old, I fell down a staircase, trying to ollie down a staircase on the skateboard at like 2 a.m. in the morning at Columbia Elementary School. I had to drive back to my house, get my mom up, because I'm still in fucking high school at this point. I had to get my mom up, like, you need to take me to the hospital. She goes, why? And I lift my chin. You're never going to be able to see it in this picture, but I have a scar right here.
Yeah, I just boom
along my chin. When I did that, she could see my bone, you know?
Yeah.
And like, so since then, I've just had this like weird thing about facial stuff. So this fucking scene of Hinako, like having to put on the mask. So like all these maidens, all these girls and whatnot, all throughout the dark world, they all have these face masks on. They're like half masks, and they're birds or, you know, like a fox, whatever. And you have to fucking cut off your face, dude. It's straight, it's Face Off. It's the 1997, it's Nicolas Cage, like it's fucking Face Off, dude. And like those shrine maidens are like, you know, take that knife and they just start carving around your face, and you're just seeing the blood just drip and drip and drip, and it's just, dude, the whole
and then they sew that fox mask onto Hinako, like
dude, it was so good. And that, talk about creepy, man, because that it didn't scare me. Nothing in this game like scared me, but like I was like, ugh, you know, during that whole section, dude.
You know what's the worst part of all that is that when it gets to like one of those final endings and the Fox Man takes his mask off and he didn't cut his face, all I thought was like, you son of a bitch, you just put that mask on to make it look like you did.
So, what's really interesting, I actually found a note in the Dark World about that. All men in the Dark World don't have to do that. They just put the face mask on.
Oh, interesting.
When you're walking hand in hand with him down that really long hallway, and you have the women on the left and the male on the right, you know, and whatnot. And it's more or less it's supposed to be representing Junko and whoever else, you know. But as you're walking down that hallway, every single man along the way doesn't have the crazy stitching, and like you can't see any like skin exposed or like cut or anything, any kind of blood. They're clean as hell. But all the women on the other side have these like black veins, like tying into the mask, and like you can tell that they're cut up and blah, and like all that. So no. But yeah, no, the whole ritual side, that whole thing like really got to me, and they like more that, especially for it to be in your first run, the very first story version of that, because subsequent runs, Hinako's already she has the wolf arm and she has the branding in her, and she's already wearing the face mask in the New Game Plus cycle when you enter into the Dark World, and those scenes of her cutting her arm and getting branded and cutting the face and all that, it's all like just like flashbacks in New Game Plus basically at that point. But for that to be your first experience through the Dark World and to see the ritual and to like all that, like it was very shocking, more or less.
Yeah,
I guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah, you don't expect it, and then like, but the thing is, it turns on you because then you're like, oh well, now I got to play with it, and now I have all these cool powers and stuff. So now you got this big old arm that just Hinako's swinging around, and it almost feels like if maybe that part might feel like it takes you out of Silent Hill just a little bit, but like because now you're yeah, because then you press L3 and R3 together, and you like charge up, and you can smash things, and then it's even got this like Soul Reaver thing because there's these creatures that kept respawning, and I was like, dude, what are making these creatures respawn? But for some reason, this Dark Realm, even though there's a couple creatures outside, like the fatty guy always responds too. I don't know why. Nobody else does, but he does. I never could figure out why that was. But then you get like, you literally like, your soul is mine.
Yep. Soul siphon.
So like, yes, you siphon them up and everything. But no, that part was really cool, and just the way it goes through it.
Mechanically, I don't know if you were ever in this situation or whatever, but I noticed that, and this was in story difficulty, so it's very likely an easy mode thing. But if you kill an enemy and there's another enemy still left in the room that's alive, you can go up and soul siphon the one that's on the ground to make sure that it doesn't get up again. If the enemy that's alive is close enough to you, you automatically rip their fucking soul out too, and they die instantly.
Really? Mm-hmm. I know there was something that popped up in like the tutorial that said I could soul siphon multiple enemies at the same time, but it seemed like that very rarely worked unless they were like literally stacked on each other.
To each other, yeah.
Like I mean, like if they were like 5 feet away, it was like 5 feet too far. That's interesting. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, no, I was doing that like strategically. Like I would I would like kill one, kite the other ones in the room or whatever. Because it's the unfortunate side of the ending of this game is that like there's so much combat at the end that is required. Personally, I think it's fun. Like I had a good time with it. I think it's all right. But I can totally tell, especially now that I'm doing multiple runs, it's gonna be a pain in the ass. And even more so into the fog. This section, but yeah, so I was purposely like killing one enemy, kiting the other ones, and then dragging all of them over to that enemy or whatever, and giving myself enough of a window to be able to do the soul siphon, because I was able to like kill multiple of them at once, by sucking out the soul of the one that's already dead and then killing the other two that are in the room, because they were close enough to it. So yeah, definitely a good strategy.
Yeah, that's a good tactic right there. I like that one. Yeah, so I have to try that. There's actually one other gameplay style that I had in my notes, but like it's funny because it happened once and I thought it was going to be kind of like an ongoing thing, and it never happens again. It's only in the very beginning. But there's a moment where you have like a Crash Bandicoot kind of gameplay part where like you're running away from like the fog monster and stuff, and it literally has like where you're running towards the camera, and I was like, oh, this might be a thing that's like in this game, and it only happens that one time. I thought it was kind of weird. It was like that was the only time you saw it, And I always think of Crash Bandicoot when I see that, like like when Uncharted does that, it's like, oh, here's a Crash Bandicoot moment, know.
Yep. Yeah, and I think another relevant comment, you and I talk about this a lot on this podcast, is how much we loathe and hate instant deaths in horror games. I think this game has maybe two. I think it's all the chase scenes.
Well, yeah, it has those run away from the fog again.
because I think that's the only time that I properly died in one hit outside of bosses. There's a couple bosses that have some like super fucking attacks. That Foxman being one of them. His forward swipe for whatever reason would just fucking knock out most of my health. If I hadn't upgraded my health at that point, it would have been one shot, like every time. But anyways, so most of my deaths in this game were surrounding the chase scenes, and it's mostly just because it was the third chase scene when you're up in the mountain or whatever, and what are you trying to get to? I think you're either trying to get to Hinako's house or to Shu's house or whatever.
I think you get to Shu's house because that's the long run one. Yeah,
right. I probably died my first run anyways, probably 3 or 4 times in that section, just because I chose left instead of right, and like ran into a wall and went fuck, and instant died. But I was super glad to see that there really isn't a whole lot, if anything, of instant death in this game, which is super nice. It's very forgiving.
Yeah, well, that's what I like. Is one, like the save points are always like, so there's literally a save point right before you do any of those running scenes, so you never get screwed over in this game. Because that's always one of my biggest. That's always one of those ones like you just don't need to have those scenes where it's like, oh, guess what, you haven't saved in a long time. Well, here we're gonna have this running scene all of a sudden, and you could get, if you take the wrong path. Well, guess what? You're dead, and then I'm also glad, and I don't think any Silent Hill actually has this. There might be one out there, but there's never a character in Silent Hill that's like, oh, you can't actually fight this thing, and if it touches you, you instantly get killed. Like, I don't think I can't think of anything. There might be something that takes like more hits than it's worth to kill, but nothing that like ever really like takes you out. And I'm glad this game doesn't have that too, because that's always my biggest fear, is because it's like, are they gonna put one of those dumb characters in there that just always follows you around and can take you out in one or two hits? Because to me, I don't find that scary. I just find that annoying. It's just more like, I was trying to get something done, and now I got to go loop you around. Well,
I was totally expecting it, just because there's so many enemies that do grab you in this game, especially the large guys. Like the very first time I got grabbed by a tentacle, thing or whatever, and it lifts you up in the air and it like slams you down on the. I'm like, dude, I'm dead. Like there's no way. But no, Hinako survived. Thank you, developers. Thank you, because that's a learning experience. Don't get grabbed. So,
which is funny because it's like, I remember that was a comment I had like on the older Silent Hill games that I always kind of noticed, is that like that's why I used to like, I'd go like, I think that Resident Evil is kind of a little bit scarier than Silent Hill, is because in a lot of the older games like 1, 2, and 3 and 4 even, not very many things grab you. Like at all. Like there's so many, they swing at you and so on like that, but you kind of realize it's like, dude, nothing's gonna grab me, so I can just kind of go by. Where in Resident Evil, things always grab you, so if you sometimes try to run past it, like there's that chance that it might just turn and grab you real quick and you get kind of stuck. Where like in Silent Hill, it's like, whatever, it might look scary, but I'm just gonna run past it, because what's it gonna do? It's gonna do a slow swing at me. But in this game, that like, a lot of the characters grab you or stab you or whatever. The scarecrows, the weird ladies, the creepy liquor monster things, like the big fat guys. Like a lot of them all have something that will, like, they can get you,
Yep. No, I very much agree. What'd you think of just so we can touch on some of these bosses and whatnot? Like, so one of the very first like bosses you come across is the Shrine Maiden Sakuko, and you're like on a bridge, and like you go up. She's got this like large paddle looking thing and whatnot, and like this bell and shit, and like person, I fucking steamrolled her my first run. Like I just steamrolled the fuck out of that fight. But I mean, what'd you feel about that?
Well, I did die on my first round there, because I did try to play it defensively, and I realized once again that playing it defensively kind of screwed me over more. Like instead of just running up and swing, dodge occasionally, swing, and then the only thing you got to kind of was when she starts to teleport, and you got to figure out which side of the bridge she's on, because if you all you have to do is run to the one side just like 15 feet too far, and there's not enough time to turn around and go to the other one. But once you kind of figure it out, then it's like, okay, she's gonna be here, and if she's on the left first, she'll be on the right next, and so on like that. But it was still kind of a cool battle. I thought it was different.
Oh yeah.
And once again, at that point, you still barely. It was like I was putting 2 and 2 together. Like, oh, that's that friend, because once again, she's just barely in the game at that point. So that's the first friend you're killing, and so on like that. I did think that was still kind of a cool look and everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, her design's super cool because she's like missing like her bottom jaw basically, and it just cuts into her throat, and there's like all these like teeth looking things coming out and all that. Very very dead looking, very paled out and white and all that. And there's some good achievements surrounding a lot of the boss fights too. Like in this fight in particular, she sets off that bell that I was talking about or whatever. So if you can avoid getting hit by that bell the whole fight, that's an achievement. And it's like cool. Okay, so it adds a little extra challenge. The Rinko fight, dude. Like I think that the entrance of the Rinko fight is fucking so cool because you're in that cutscene with the Wolfman and whatnot. And she just fucking comes out of nowhere with this like just glowing hot flail, with all these chains on it and shit, and just slaps it down on the ground in front of you. And like, oh, dude, like her design is fucking cool as shit because she's the fire version of Sakuko, more or less, But like, yeah, I love that fight too. I thought it was super cool.
Well, one of the scenes that I thought was really interesting too is the one where you pretty much kill off all your friends, like in the Dark Realm and whatnot. And there's the part where Rinko is in this cage, and you just kind of could see her there and so on like that. And she's above the flaming thing of like hot lava and whatnot. And you go through, you solve some puzzles and so on like that. You flip some switches, and then she kind of goes down each time you put one in there, and she starts screaming at you and everything like that. And the part where like Hinako just literally like puts the third one in and pulls that lever and just like, she's like, no, Hinako, no, you get down on your knees and you beg for forgiveness. Stuff. And Hinako just turns around, and just walks away slowly. And the thing falls in the hot lava. I laughed so hard there. I was like busting up laughing. She's screaming and everything like that, burning up in the hot lava. I thought that was like the funniest thing. I even think the other one, even though like, because at that point you're just like, that stupid bitch, Rinko, like get the hell out of my life, Where there's the Saku one too, where you leave her in the darkness, but once again, the first time around, it's like it didn't have as much of an impact because you're like, I just don't know as much about this character, but I kind of still laughed the second time where the lights are all shutting off and you realize that like she's afraid of the dark, and she's got all these mental issues.
Terrified of it.
And so like the candles are like, tuk, 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 and then Hinako's just like the door slams.
Yep. Jesus, man.
Oh man, I just thought that was just
well, even shoes. So like, Rinko's makes sense to me. Sakuko's death makes sense to me. Shoes, like Hinako killing Shu. I didn't understand because we hang him, or he's hanging from those chains or whatever in that room. I really tried to think of something that was like, what does that mean? Like, what is the suffocation? Like, what does that mean? But I couldn't think of anything.
The weird thing too is you don't technically kill Shu the same way that the other two. You like literally flip a switch. You're like, see ya, where like Shu, you walk in on it and he's already being hung, or he's already been hanging there. And I don't even think is he even alive when you find him finally?
Yeah, because he's got both hands up in the chains. He's got the large one around his neck or whatever, and then doesn't. I'm pretty sure we get rid of the chain. We drop those chains of his hands, right? So he actually is hanging by the neck.
Yeah, maybe Hinako does kill him. Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, I know in like the theory is from like the Foxman's perspective is that you have to kill everything of your previous life, your friends, your family, all that stuff, because you're going to a new world. Literally, like this whole new marriage is like going to a new dimension. In a sense, you're going to, so there's that there. But I'm not too sure there. Because
I found it interesting that Shu becomes the ending 2 fight, or maybe even the ending 4 fight, I guess too. Because I thought it was interesting that we fight Sakuko, we fight Rinko, we fight mom and dad, but Shu never happened, at least in my play experience so far. So like I'm and again, like I already have 35 hours in this game, but like I am so looking forward to getting ending 2, 4, and the UFO ending to finally say that I've done it all,
Yeah.
And then the parents fight. I thought the parents fight was super fucking cool, and yet again, it's a direct copy clone of Dark Souls, where it's literally the Ornstein and Smo fight, which is like arguably one of the harder fights in the original Dark Souls game, where you have fat, slow, lumbering, heavy attack, does a fuckload of damage to you type enemy, but you also have this really fast and nimble, enemy type too. So fat one being dad, small and skinny one being mom and whatnot. So for me, not knowing that there was an achievement surrounding just kill dad, I focused on dad because that's how I've always done the Ornstein and Smo fight in Dark Souls. Is like you take out the slow one first, and then you deal with Ornstein after the fact. So to get an achievement off that was super cool. And like very very surprising.
Yeah, exactly. Because the first time I did it, I killed the mom first because I kept going like, man, she just keeps getting in my way, know? And then the ending's the same no matter what, I notice. But it ends the fight faster if you just kill dad because you don't have to worry about, mom.
So if you kill mom you still have to kill dad? You have to do both?
Yeah, okay. So you pretty much kill mom, and she almost more gets like stunned. She just stays there kind of frozen, know, and then you kill dad, and then it has the exact same ending, cool. Where they walk out and so on like that, and then they see the tall version of you outside there, and the gets smashed.
Yeah. That scene was super interesting too. So like Spence just said, like there's a scene like deep late into the game, where Hinako like turns into this fucking wolf beast looking thing without a face. It's just like all this. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just very fleshy, looking face or whatever, without any definitive features. And she's the one going around physically like killing people and whatnot. And like there's that scene where mom and dad are like standing outside. Hinako is in her full true beast form self at this point, and it's very heavily implied like she's already been married off at this point and blah blah blah. And dad is more or less saying this is no longer your home, you're not supposed to be here anymore, whereas mom is like, oh honey, just look at her and just give her blah blah blah, like everything's happy and fine and dandy and whatnot. So you have like super sad and depressed dad, you have like happy mom and whatnot, like all surrounding Hinako. And this beast form of herself just reaches out, grabs both of their heads, lifts them 3 feet off the ground, and all you see is just like the framing of just their feet, and you just hear and just just blood and just bits just fall, dude. Gnarly. And then later later's run or whatever, it's like that same scene happens, but now the Hinako version of herself that doesn't want to move on and doesn't want to, live, wants to remain in her own life, witnesses that happen in front of her. So she sees her beast form self kill her fucking parents right in front of her, and like she gets covered in blood and shit, and like it's just like there's so many cool like little things like that scattered throughout this game that's just too good, just way too good.
Yeah, no, it's just so interesting. Just the thing is, and even like the dad, because he's like literally crying, like almost like because of Japanese tradition, he can't accept her back in, even though he does actually technically miss her. That's why I don't look at the dad as actually like he's not a good dad, but he's not like he doesn't hate his family at the same time. He's technically not evil. Realistically, he's just a guy who made a lot of bad decisions. So there's just that kind of thing there. But yeah, that one's interesting there. And then the other ending, I guess we could just touch on, is that UFO one, which it's done in like it's cool because it's like, it looks like 60s manga style, which I thought was pretty neat, like a Loop on the Third comic or something like that. But it's just more like it plays out like a very goofy, like, all three of the friends, or I guess 4 of the friends, are all there, and they're just almost having fun. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's just kind of goofy, wacky, and so on like that. They're just talking like they're gonna hang out and have a good time, and they're whatever the heck they're doing. I don't know. It went by like fast, and it was kind of like, oh, okay, cool. And then the dog comes flying by in the flying saucer, and that's what makes it the UFO ending.
Nice.
Which I was thinking about it more with that, because Silent Hill always touches on the UFO stuff. It would almost be kind of cool if one of the Silent Hill games just turned out to be a UFO game, but they treated it really seriously. Like, it wasn't a joke ending anymore. It's like, oh, no. All this stuff's actually is because of aliens is going on. And I'm like, I kind of thought more and more about it, especially with this one here, because the UFO is not just like, in all the other Silent Hill games, it's like a super secret ending that's just kind of like a weird, goofy thing, but you never see stuff along the way. Where in this one, it's like strung out throughout the entire game because of, Hinako and Shu, they play like this, whatever, Space Wars or whatever together since they were kids. That was their whole thing. So they're super into sci-fi. I just think it'd be kind of cool to actually see a game in the future that, like, all the weird stuff was happening because of actually sci-fi elements. I know that some people might think that's a little too, out of, left field for Silent Hill, but it's like, is it really? It's like, it's always been there. Like, I think it could be kind of a cool way to change it up, to like, instead it's very creepy, but it's all alien type stuff, you know.
No, I very much agree. I think that I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. I think that this game in general was a massive statement from Konami that I'm not going to say they're back yet, because God knows what the future looks like. But this was a fantastic step in the right direction. I think that Silent Hill as a franchise is back. I think that based off a lot of posts and research that I've done, listening to the director talk about this game, this was very experimental for them, in how they went about it, the way they designed it, developed it, created it into Japanese culture instead of being like, Americana style culture and whatnot. He more or less said that he doesn't think that this is going to set any kind of precedent for future Silent Hill games. So don't expect future Silent Hill games to be so action focused, to be so, like this type of tone, this type of atmosphere and whatnot. But I think it was a good step in the right direction for Konami here. And I think that they opened up a lot of avenues for better and more thought-provoking titles in the future, because they just proved that Silent Hill can sell itself just based off title alone. The reason why I say that, this far exceeded Silent Hill 2 Remake's sale numbers, which, for how popular Silent Hill 2 is, remake aside or not, just the fact that Silent Hill 2 got remade and relaunched in 2024 and this outsold it, as a fresh IP with no ties to the previous series outside of what we found out in game. I don't know. I've got good feelings about future of Silent Hill. Like I really hope this projects it forward, and really helps the franchise along, because there's a lot of cool stuff that can be done with this medium, and this is proof positive of that.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I think that this is like, it was probably one of the best games I've played in a long time. Let alone like just Silent Hill wise, it literally is up there like high bar. It's for any of the people that are complaining about it. Like, one, I don't know if I can call you a fan realistically. I always, whenever they use that term, it's like the fans don't like this. I'm like, are those really the fans? Let's be honest. Like, they don't sound like they sure sound like they don't like the game. Actually, to tell you the truth, because the thing is, I feel like, dude, this is like as Silent Hill as you can get. Like, some of those the American Silent Hill games, like they're a little bit they still felt very Silent Hill, but they felt like they were trying to like ape some other styles and so on like that, and experiment and so on. Where this one feels like, you could tell me this was Silent Hill 5, I'd be like, yep, makes total sense. Yep. I would believe you, and I think that's kind of what it is. But I think also this one probably timed just perfectly. It's like came out right here in October, so maybe some people want to be in spooky season, so maybe there's just, and maybe because it's not like tied with a number in like Silent Hill 2, there could be some of those people, because the game's old by this point, they go, well, I never played the first which it's a perfect one for that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I'd be. I don't know. I'm curious to see. Kind of like one core difference that I noticed in this game, as comparatively to majority of the other games outside of 3, is that this is it's a female protagonist here, and I am curious if they're going to continue along that path too, because very notably, most Silent Hill games have a male protagonist.
I think actually all of them do, except for 3, other than this one. Yeah. So it's a funny haha, but like thinking about Silent Hill F, quote unquote F, female. There it is. We figured it out after 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Like, I really don't know what F stands for. It can mean a billion different things, but I found the connection funny, with that. So, but yeah, no, I don't know. I really just can't talk highly enough about this game. I think if you're into survival horror, psychological horror, that style genre and whatnot, have a bit of a like for a little bit of challenging combat and like like I said, if you like Soul, this is not Dark Souls, it's not Bloodborne, it's not From Software developed, but it has a lot of the core ideas of what those games are and whatnot, and I think it executes it pretty well. just really nothing but good things to say about this game. I look forward to finishing this, like outright. Like I've finished. I've done 3 runs so far. Like I can't wait to like see the other endings in context, get all the notes, do all the journal things, do all the like. And not to mention, like like we forgot to mention too, like there's Spence mentioned like the sacred sword, so that's like one item that you can get in this game. But there's the secret lightsaber in the game or whatever that I was mentioning. And like, what's really funny about it is like, from what I understand, is that basically like when you first pick it up, it starts out about the length of a dagger or whatever, and then every subsequent playthrough that you do in a new game plus cycle with that weapon, it gets longer and longer, and it makes combat easier because you can reach further. That's so good.
Yeah, which I want to say that was the exact same way because that's in Silent Hill 3, and I want to say it had that same thing too. That it keeps getting bigger and bigger and so on like that. But yeah, so apparently I have it unlocked. I just got to find when I start the game over again. So if I do a third run, I could probably get it. Yeah. And then you just have to talk to the first poster, I think, and then it pops up there.
Cool.
And so that'd be kind of cool for that next run and so on like that. But yeah, there's just like too much good stuff to say about this one here. I think it's one of those ones that's definitely well worth going out and playing and all that stuff. And I think it's just a good time period for survival horrors, and I think they're coming in strong. They're doing them right. As I said, this one I feel like whatever there is like wrong with it, they're like it's such like most minor stuff. Everything else is done so well. I feel like you could jump into it. You're never just going to be punished too badly for anything. It has good puzzles. It has all that good classic survival horror elements in there. It could have more of inventory space. I'll say that. Like that was what made Silent Hill 1 nice, is that I could pick up everything I wanted in that game.
Oh, that's one complete piece we forgot to explain just real quick before the end of all this. The prayer and like upgrade system and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
So sporadically throughout the worlds, there's a lot of these like little shrine things that you can go to, and like one, it's your save point, it's your upgrade place, it's where you upgrade your health, your stamina, your faith, your blah, all the things. And then there's this whole other system that we forgot to mention called Amemories, and Amemories are passive abilities that you can level up and you can get more of. So you start off and you can like attach one of these things to your body, and it more or less, I mean, like, I'm trying to think of an example of one, like, do more damage with, like, when your durability on your weapon is at 100%, you do more damage or whatever, like it's random things like that. I thought that was a really cool system because it's a really light version of it, but it's like you can kind of make builds in this game, like you can center your combat build based off of these Amemories and whatnot, for having higher health when when you have like when you do enough damage or whatever, like your health and maximizes or whatever. There's so many different like versions of like what these Amemory things do that I'd be really interested in experimenting with. So you mentioned at full upgrade of Amemory slots you can do 4.
Well, on my first playthrough, I could only get 3. And then I noticed that like one opened up on 4. So I'm guessing by playthrough 3, there'd be 5. So I'm guessing 5 will be the total. But
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. The perks that I used for mine, at least the ones I can remember right off the bat, is I had the one where it made my focus charge quicker. I had the one where when I was focusing, it wouldn't whatever the psyche wouldn't drop down. Why am I drawing a blank on what it's called?
Sanity.
Yeah. Sanity wouldn't drop down. And then what else did I have? I think I had, for a while there, I had the one that made the dodging easier, but then I took that one off for, I think I found something that I liked more. But no, I thought that system was kind of a neat one there too, and just a little light upgrade and everything like that. It does give you like, hey, if you want to kind of add to it. Sometimes the only problem I always have with perk systems is that there's generally, like in certain games, it's like there's like ones that are just way better than the other ones. It's not saying that the other ones aren't cool, but if you only have 3 slots, you're never going to put this other one on there. Yeah. That's the only thing I think it's a little bit kind of like a bummer about certain perk systems is that, But this one, I felt like there was enough variety in there where, like, depending on what kind of items you want to use or what kind of weapons, or if you focus more on your dodging or your counters, you can kind of do that. Oh, I know what the other ones were. I had one where when I killed enemies, I would get more sanity, and when I killed enemies, I would get more health. So I always had those are my 4 that I have. Now I remember them all, because that made a difference, because every time you'd kill an enemy, you get a little bit of health and a little bit of sanity, and then you could go on. So I could continuously keep specialing everybody and not having to worry about it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I thought just having because it really doesn't affect a whole lot in the game, at least like not drastically enough, like you just mentioned, because that was one of the ones that I had too, is get the kill and you get a little bit of health back or whatever. Super nice to have. Is it really a necessity? No, probably not. But again, it just being like just another layered system on top of what already exists here adds a little bit of, we'll just say it adds a little bit of spice to the, the combat and shit, like just a little pinch of salt, but no, I thought it was cool. And there's achievements surrounding that too. So at those shrines, you can gamble more or less, like you toss faith at it or whatever, and it gives you a random Amamori, and I think there's like 30 of them that you can get out of those. You can find them in the world, so they're kind of like in hidden spots and whatnot, so lots to look out for in the world, to go and collect and whatnot, these being one of them. So
I'm not too sure how random they are, to tell you the truth, because when I reload my same file and went to do the same run to get the other ending, I noticed when I drew those out, they're the same ones in like order.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, maybe they are. Maybe it was just because I reload that file that like in that one, was the random order was already chosen. I don't know, but I did notice that. But no, that was a cool system there and everything like that. I thought that was it worked out well just to kind of have that. I wish that those Emmas were a little bit easier to find, but that was like the only thing that was like, I had so much more currency than I did like the Emmas for upgrade. Because my upgrade, I would have had all my stats would have been complete if I had more of those Emmas.
Oh yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I think I have like close to like 18,000 like faith on me right now, like that I just can't use because I don't have the fucking Emma things.
Yeah, so there's period points when I had like 5,000 like faith because I just kept selling stuff, but I just didn't have any Emmas to use, and I think I only have like a couple more for my sanity. I think I have my health maxed out, my stamina maxed out. And the perk ones, I think, once again, if you play a third round, there'll be another one that I can upgrade. But yeah. That's just a cool little bonus system just to add in there for the Silent Hill experience. But yeah, any final thoughts you have on this whole Silent Hill F1? I think we talked about all aspects in great detail and fun.
Oh yeah. No, I'll just kind of round it back around to play it. I really don't think there's, if you like Silent Hill in general, especially the original trilogy and whatnot, like this is up there. This is one of the good ones. And thank you, Konami, and for finally doing something, dude, because it's been so fucking long. Like it's literally been what I think the last major game they've ever launched was probably Metal Gear 5 about 10 years ago.
I think so, because yeah, there's just been a couple Contras. That's the only other thing I can think of that there was not a collection or a remaster. So it is kind of weird that it's like, but the fact that this is like first game in like practically a decade and it's literally firing on all cylinders, like like literally like. Because I hate it, the last, Silent Hill, post Silent Hill 3 and even 4, I'll give 4 a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt. It's not that they were bad, but it's like they never just felt like they hit the same way that the other ones kind of did. It was kind of always like, oh, there's another Silent Hill game out. Oh, okay, cool. But on that 360 era, there was other games to be played. There was Dead Space. There was Resident Evil 5 and 6. There was even The Evil Within and so on like that. So like I felt like Silent Hill kind of fell to the wayside for a little bit there, even though they kind of put them out there. And it's not that they were bad or anything, but or this one I felt like, oh, here it is, and this is like Konami means business, So I hope that what I really hope is not only does Silent Hill, are we going to go back? Are we finally going to get Castlevania? Because it's been more than a decade. Literally, I don't think a Castlevania game's come out since like 2011 or whatever the last one was. It's like, dude, it's been so in a sense. I always feel technically Konami's like flagship title, So hopefully this is a good sign that we're going to be getting more stuff, coming from Konami. I don't see why not. I think this game's doing, even if there might be a couple like bitchy fans out there, I think the sales and I think the thing is the people that like this game, I think will outweigh those like couple naysayers that just happen to have a little bit more soapbox, just they have a little bit higher soapbox, I guess, is why they're being heard. But it's like I don't see what there is. It's like if you don't like this, you must not like survival horror. That's all I gotta say. But
yep.
I don't even know what you're doing with this genre if that's the case. But I'm not saying it has to be your favorite, but boy, it should be damn good.
Yeah.
I mean, even comparatively, it's like even all the Resident Evil stuff coming out. It's like it's literally like better than all that even as well too. So but yeah, Silent Hill F, good times. We'll figure out whatever the heck we want to talk about next and go from there. But till then, you can always check out more Silent Evil podcasts along with Old Man Orange ones on YouTube and Spotify. Till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I am Cameron.
And we'll see you some other time.